Chapter 1282, A Fight with Universe God Chen. Chapter 1282, A Fight with Universe God Chen. Man E, sit down. Lord of Scarlet Island arranged Man E to sit next to him, and then he looked over at Jian Wushuang. You are Jian Wushuang? The Lord of Scarlet Island smiled and said, I heard that you killed Zhuge Qiu from the Holy Prefecture, and it was a one-on-one confrontation? Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. A universe master killed an advanced first heaven universe god. I wouldn't believe it even if I saw it with my own eyes, the Lord of Scarlet Island said. Lord, what do you mean? Jian Wushuang was surprised. He thought that the Lord would ask him about the issues concerning Jiu Shi and Jin Feng. He did not expect that the Lord would question his strength straight from the beginning of their meeting. I have already arranged an opponent for you, Lord of Scarlet Island said, slightly waving his hand. Whoosh! A figure appeared by the Lord of Scarlet Island. This was a black-clothed middle-aged man who wore a kind smile focused on Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows as he knew this man. You're familiar with this universe god Chen. I heard that when you joined Scarlet Island, it was universe god Chen who personally verified your strength. Lord of Scarlet Island said, laughing. Of course. Jian Wushuang nodded. You two fight in this palace. Just try your best, Lord of Scarlet Island said. Jian Wushuang nodded in unison with universe god Chen. Both of them moved to the center of the palace. Jian Wushuang, the last time you sparred with me, your swordsmanship surprised me. I didn't expect that you were so strong. Today, please show all your skills, Universe God Chen said with hearty laughter. I will, Jian Wushuang replied. Jian Wushuang really could not figure out why the Lord of Scarlet Island had asked him to fight Universe God Chen again. However, he was glad to fight with a universe god at the peak of first heaven. Both Jian Wushuang and universe god Chen took out their longswords. Let's get started. Universe god Chen dived forward as he casually swung the scarlet longsword in his hand. The casual strike actually contained his divine power. It could apply more pressure to Jian Wushuang than that of an advanced first heaven universe god. Buzz! Jian Wushuang's eyes sparkled with killing intent as mighty power surged into his sword. It was soon that he was displaying nirvana. Clang! With a loud boom, Jian Wushuang was forced to step back. I've used my full strength, but his move puts me at an absolute disadvantage. Is a universe god at the peak of first heaven really so powerful? Jian Wushuang was shocked. Jian Wushuang, I heard that when you fought Zhuge Qiu, you used a realm technique to suppress some of his strength. Now let me have a look at your realm technique, Universe God Chen said with a smile. You know I have realm techniques? Jian Wushuang's face fell. If that is what you wish. Jian Wushuang immediately took out the gold gourd. At the sight of the gold gourd, the Lord of Scarlet Island's eyes lit up. Then the mighty blaze quicksand surged out and formed a quicksand realm, suppressing universe god Chen. Jian Wushuang had used quicksand realm to suppress 30% of Zhuge Qiu's strength. Apparently, universe god Chen was stronger than Zhuge Qiu, so the realm only suppressed 10% of universe god Chen's strength. Jian Wushuang, be careful! Universe god Chen smiled. He waved his long sword and unleashed a strike, which swept toward his opponent like lightning. The sword light fluttered slightly. When it was about to hit Jian Wushuang, the sword light was divided into 4 streaks. A suffocating coldness arose. It struck terror into Jian Wushuang's heart. He went pale and immediately swung his sword to resist the attack. Clang! 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 After 4 confrontations, Jian Wushuang's arm became numb so that he was barely unable to hold his sword. How powerful! Jian Wushuang was shocked. He knew that he was inferior to any universe god at the peak of first heaven, but he did not expect that the gap would be as big as this. If universe god Chen used his full strength, Jian Wushuang would be unable to deflect a few attacks. Jian Wushuang, you can't kill Zhuge Qiu with such strength. Show me your real killing moves. Universe god Chen growled. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate. Immediately, phew, the sword light emerged, and the sword began to chant a tune. It sounded crisp and intoxicating. When the sword light appeared, the Lord of Scarlet Island, and man, he could not help but look over at it. Universe god Chen was immediately influenced by a horrible soul attack. Humph! Although universe god Chen made a little pale face as he snorted, his consciousness did not come to a halt. He immediately reacted in time, waving his hands to shatter the beautiful sword light. After breaking the sword light, universe god Chen stood there silently for a while. He finally looked up to fix his eyes on Jian Wushuang. It is actually a consciousness attack. This consciousness attack is so powerful. I was almost trumped by it. Zhuge Qiu is not a universe god at the peak of first heaven, so it is understandable why it was impossible for him to block you. No wonder you killed him. I could only deal with an advanced first heaven universe god, but if I encounter a universe god at the peak of first heaven like you, it won't work, Jian Wushuang said. Hee, I'm afraid that those universe gods who have weak consciousnesses won't be able to resist such an attack in time. Universe god Chen smiled. His complexion had recovered at that moment. Okay, stop here. Lord of Scarlet Island spoke. Jian Wushuang and universe god Chen naturally did not continue to fight. Jian Wushuang, do you know why I wanted to meet you and let you spar with universe god Chen? Lord of Scarlet Island asked while staring at Jian Wushuang. I have no idea. Jian Wushuang shook his head. Chapter 1283, A Great Favor. Chapter 1283, A Great Favor. Jian Wushuang really did not know why Lord of Scarlet Island asked him to fight universe god Chen again. But he knew it was not because that he was curious about his battle strength. Lord of Scarlet Island smiled and said, I received the news saying the reason you could kill Zhuge Qiu was that you possessed a kind of realm technique in addition to your own strength. That skill restrained Zhuge Qiu from giving his strength a full play. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. The Blaze Quicksand realm really played a big role as he killed Zhuge Qiu. Realm techniques are rarely seen. You are just a universe master, but you managed to display a realm that could put pressure on a first heaven advanced universe god. So I guess you must have a high-grade realm technique, at least at the Chaos Magic Treasure level. I asked you to fight universe god Chen because I want to feel the power of that realm personally. Lord of Scarlet Island smiled. The result, the realm you've just displayed, is entirely composed of blaze quicksands, if I am not wrong. Blaze quicksand is a horrible substance in the eternal chaotic world. A realm that is formed completely by blaze quicksands is surely formidable. Since you are just a universe master, you are unable to fully exert the real power of this realm. I cannot imagine how horrifying it would be if it were executed by an ordinary universe god or a second heaven universe god. Upon hearing that, Jian Wushuang knitted his brows. Obviously, Lord of Scarlet Island coveted his blaze quicksand gourd. As if he had seen through Jian Wushuang's thought, Lord of Scarlet Island looked at Jian Wushuang again and smiled. Jian Wushuang, don't worry. Your realm technique is indeed precious, and I am tempted by it. If you were not a member of Scarlet Island, I don't mind killing you and snatching your treasures. He paused for a while and continued, "However, you are an expert at Scarlet Island. As the Lord of Scarlet Island, I'm ashamed of robbing my subordinate of his belongings." Jian Wushuang was speechless. Yes, if Lord of Scarlet Island coveted his blaze quicksand gourd, he would not allow Man Yi and Universe God Chen stood beside him. "Jian Wushuang, I mentioned your realm technique due to a favor." Lord of Scarlet Island added, "A favor?" Jian Wushuang was confused. "Yes, a great favor." Lord of Scarlet Island smiled and asked, "Jian Wushuang, do you know who is the real local tyrant of Daiyu region?" "Of course, it's the Daiyu Palace." Jian Wushuang replied. "Yes, the Daiyu Palace." Lord of Scarlet Island nodded. "Although our Scarlet Island, the Golden Sun sect, and the Holy Prefecture fight each other fiercely in Daiyu region, and our strength is formidable, in fact, none of us dares to violate the Daiyu Palace. To put it bluntly, we must do whatever the Daiyu Palace orders obediently." Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Although what Lord of Scarlet Island said was not pleasant to the ear, he was telling the truth. The Daiyu Palace was a force of real supremacy in Daiyu region. The most supreme one in the Daiyu Palace is its palace master, who is a genuine third heaven universe god. He is a real supreme expert in Daiyu region. Lord of Scarlet Island continued. 300 years ago, Master of Daiyu Palace spread the news that he was badly in need of a high-grade realm treasure or secret skill. Knowing that, all the forces in Daiyu region were shocked, and experts from all forces offered their realm treasures and secret skills in order to gain his favor. But it was a pity that none of them met his requirements. Jian Wushuang understood all this now. "You mean that my blaze quicksand gourd probably can meet his requirements?" Jian Wushuang frowned and asked. "Yes." Lord of Scarlet Island nodded and said, "If he displays such a realm personally, its power must be earth-shattering. So I assume it can meet his requirements. Furthermore, he said that he just wants to borrow it for some time and will return it when his matters are done." Lord of Scarlet Island cast a glance at Jian Wushuang. "Jian Wushuang, now that you have killed Zhuge Xiao and a core disciple from the Holy Prefecture, they definitely will try every possible method to kill you. Although the Master of Golden Sun sect are not certain that you killed Jin Feng, he will not let you go easily. That is to say, you are now in a very bad situation." Jian Wushuang's face fell. He was aware Lord of Scarlet Island was telling the truth. Both the Holy Prefecture and the Golden Sun sect would pose a great threat to him. "As the Divine General of the Scarlet Island, I surely will try my best to protect you. But if the two overlords put pressure on me, I probably cannot resist that. Moreover, you cannot always hide in the headquarters of the Scarlet Island. Therefore, at this critical moment, if you can obtain the favor of Master of Daiyu Palace, you will benefit immensely. With his deterrent, be it the Holy Prefecture or the Golden Sun sect, they would weigh the gains and losses carefully before striking you. You can even ask Master of Daiyu Palace to return your favor by solving this matter for you. If so, the Holy Prefecture and the Golden Sun sect will never dare to attack you again." "Do you understand what I mean?" Lord of Scarlet Island asked. "Yes, I do." Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. Of course he did. Great trees were good for shade, not to mention a towering tree like Master of Daiyu Palace. If he really could gain his favor, the Holy Prefecture and the Golden Sun sect could not threaten him any more. However, I must not rely solely on the protection of others concerning my enmity between the Holy Prefecture and the Golden Sun sect. What matters the most is my strength." Jian Wushuang clenched his hands and made a decision. "Jian Wushuang, are you willing to lend your blaze Quicksand Realm to Master of Daiyu Palace temporarily? Lord of Scarlet Island inquired. Of course. Jian Wushuang nodded. It was worthwhile to lend it to Master of Daiyu Palace temporarily in exchange of his favor. In that case, I'll take you to the Daiyu Palace to meet him at once. Lord of Scarlet Island said. All right. Jian Wushuang nodded. They immediately moved toward the Daiyu Palace. Chapter 1284. The Present. Chapter 1284. The Present. Daiyu Palace. As an emperor force of Daiyu world, hid in misty mountains. Between countless and endless of mountains, Daiyu Palace sect was situated inside an extensive cave mansion. Master of Scarlet Island, I have told His Highness that you have arrived. His Highness, together with Lord Wu Tsang, are presently on their way, said a white sector god within Daiyu Palace. Lord Wu Tsang is here as well. Master of Scarlet Island was taken aback. Lord Wu Tsang has been residing in Daiyu Palace this entire time. He seems to be working together with His Highness to come up with a strategy. White Sector God explained. A strategy? Master of Scarlet Island appeared more bewildered. Master, who is Lord Wu Tsang? Jian Wushuang, who was beside Master of Scarlet Island, asked in confusion. Before Master of Scarlet Island could even open his mouth, White Sector God has already started explaining. Lord Wu Tsang is from Snow Kingdom, who is also a universe god of third heaven, like our Highness. A universe god of third heaven? Jian Wushuang faltered. At his current level, a universe god of second heaven would have already greatly surpassed him in terms of power. A universe god of third heaven could probably kill him even with a single breath. Without waiting for a long time in the palace, Jian Wushuang and Master of Scarlet Island soon see two figures walking in. Amongst the two, one of them had all white hair, and his movements appeared to be very sage-like. As for the other, he was clad in a black robe, a middle-aged man sporting a messy hairdo. Greetings, Your Highness, my lord. Master of Scarlet Island, who ruled both the Scarlet Island and Daiyu world, was a man with a commanding presence. Yet, at this exact moment, he was giving the two people in front of him a bow. With Master of Scarlet Island acting as such, Jian Wushuang naturally became very respectful. Get up! As the elder waved his hand, both Master of Scarlet Island and Jian Wushuang rose. I heard you brought a realm treasure for me. Master of Daiyu Palace looked down at them. Yes, nodded Master of Scarlet Island. However, it is not mine. It belongs to the divine general of my Scarlet Island, Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang? This young man of lowly status standing beside you? Master of Daiyu Palace glanced at Jian Wushuang. Just his gaze was enough to make the hair on Jian Wushuang's back stood all at once. That feeling was as though all of his secrets were being exposed to the other in front of him. Incredible! Jian Wushuang felt secretly amazed. A universe god of third heaven is a real expert. Even in the eternal chaotic world, he is a true warrior, certainly impressive. Qing, a parasite inside of Jian Wushuang's body, continued. Jian Wushuang, bring out the golden gourd. Master of Scarlet Island commanded. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly before revealing the golden gourd all at once. This is the gourd. Master of Daiyu Palace scanned the golden gourd with a placid expression, seemingly indifferent. Since he has announced the need for a realm treasure or a form of secret skill 300 years ago, numerous people strove to send one and another treasure. The amount of treasures received were countless, but ultimately none achieved his standard. As such, he has long been exhausted by gimmicks. Up to 100 years ago, as long as one sends another kind of realm treasure that was not up to standard, the universe god of Daiyu Palace would not even bother to inform him. Today, If it was not for Master of Scarlet Island, he would not even have shown up at all. And now, upon his arrival, he was greatly disappointed. This is as the treasure did not belong to Master of Scarlet Island, but belonged to merely a young boy of low status, Jian Wushuang. What kind of realm treasure could a mere universe master, even present, Master of Dayu Palace, no longer harbor any hope towards Jian Wushuang? Master of Scarlet Island has obviously noticed this at this juncture and signaled to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang simply nodded his head before pulling out the stopper on the golden gourd. Boom! Endless golden quicksand instantly burst out from the gourd, expanding across the whole palace, eventually covering the entire palace cave mansion completely. In spite of being indifferent just a while ago, Master of Dayu Palace's eyes immediately twinkled upon seeing what the golden gourd could do. This is the golden drift sand. Standing beside Master of Dayu Palace, the middle-aged man sporting an untidy hairdo, Lord Wu Tsang, abruptly raised his head at once. After observing the surrounding endless of quicksand for a moment, he eventually locked his sight on the golden gourd in Jian Wushuang's hands. Is this the golden drift sand gourd? Wu Tsang's voice sounded a little hoarse. Golden drift sand gourd? Master of Dayu Palace lit up, as he has obviously heard of its name as well. The golden drift sand gourd already had significant popularity in the eternal chaotic world and was rather established. However, its price was astoundingly expensive. With conservative estimate, the value of the golden drift sand gourd exceeds 600,000 chaos gem. In an event where one was to bump into another who need the gourd desperately, or if it was to be placed at some high-scaled auction for sale, it could even be sold up to millions of chaos gem. Undoubtedly, this golden drift sand gourd is a very powerful and valuable realm treasure. Brother Wu Tsang, with your capability, what are the chances of succeeding if you were to exude your powers to activate the golden drift sand gourd together with the realm to pass the secret land? Master of Dayu Palace immediately looked at Wu Tsang beside him, his eyes ablazed. I have only heard about the golden drift sand gourd before, but have never seen it, so I am unsure of the strength of its power. However, it is immensely famous. Surely its powers would not be any subpar, compared to the other realm treasures or skill that others have sent in the last couple hundred of years. It must be a lot more powerful. Given my capability, with the help of the golden quicksand realm, I would have at least 50% chance of overcoming the test within the secret realm. Wu Tsang proclaimed. 50%. Master of Dayu Palace was overjoyed. He and Wu Tsang once coincidentally explored and found a secret land. The secret land was very unique, different from the norm, and contained mysterious opportunities to be discovered. They paid a huge price to enter that secret land. Unfortunately, there lies a grave test within the secret land. Despite trying many times to pass the test, they always end in failure, ultimately having to leave. Yet when they came back, through relentlessly studying about the secret land, they came to a conclusion that they would need the help of a type of realm technique in order to have a chance to overcome the test. This was how the quest and word of finding a treasure circulated as Master of Dayu Palace continues to search for the treasure for many years. Throughout several hundreds of years, Master of Dayu Palace and Wu Tsang both mobilized their powers to search for a piece of realm treasure that could meet their requirement. Yet 300 years down the road, even with the best form of realm skill, they only had up to 30% chance of passing the test. Now, with the help of the golden drift sand gourd, the possibility of passing the test is actually 50%. 50%, that is already by itself tremendous. This was sufficient for them to take the risk and give it a try. After a moment of exchange between Master of Dayu Palace and Wu Tsang, they turned around and finally set their sights on Jian Wushuang. Kitty, what's your name again? Chapter 1285. Exchange. Chapter 1285. Exchange. Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang answered. Even if the two were much more powerful than him, Jian Wushuang was still neither humble nor arrogant. You are just a universe master. It's impressive to see you have a treasure like the golden drift sand cucurbit. The master of Dayu Palace smiled. He was in good spirits. At that time, the god in white said, Your Highness, although Jian Wushuang is just a universe master, he is super famous in Dayu world. He has killed an advanced universe god of the first heaven. Really? The master of Dayu Palace was stunned. A universe master could kill an advanced universe god of the first heaven? Wu Tsang was also surprised as he stared at Jian Wushuang. Haha, I never thought that Dayu world could have so many talents. There was a Qing universe god before, but now there is someone even stronger than him. The master of Dayu Palace laughed. Then he looked at Wu Tsang and asked, Wu Tsang, how many people in your snow dojo can rival this kid? The universe god is much more powerful than the universe master. It will be extremely hard to challenge the universe god to a battle in order to move up the ranks, not to mention kill the weakest universe god. In my snow dojo, there are countless geniuses. Among them, only 3 could kill an advanced universe god in the first heaven. Wu Tsang was serious. His expression was subtle. Only 3? Then this kitty could be the best of Snow Kingdom. The master of Dayu Palace laughed again. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was astonished. He had killed the advanced universe god in the first heaven. To other people, this was a miracle. However, there were still 3 geniuses like him in the Snow Dojo. How could it be? What exactly was the Snow Dojo? Jian Wushuang, you should not look down upon the talents in the eternal chaotic world. You are new here. In Dayu world, you are seen as someone gifted. However, it will be another situation when you go to other places. The 10 Cultivation Sanctuary is another situation entirely. You understand? The voice of Qing arose. Yes, Jian Wushuang agreed. Jian Wushuang, the master of Dayu Palace, said, This golden drift sand cucurbit is truly useful to me. If you are willing to lend this to me for a short period, then I will owe you one. As long as it's within my power, you are allowed to ask me for any favor. Furthermore, this favor can affect the balance of the Dayu world. For instance, you are not allowed to ask me to destroy one of the overlords of the Dayu world, such as Golden Sun Sect or Holy Prefecture. That would be impossible. Apart from this, you can ask anything you want. The master of Dayu Palace stood there with hands clasped behind his back cheerfully. Jian Wushuang was thinking. The god in white smiled. Jian Wushuang, as far as I know, the Holy Prefecture and the Golden Sun Sect both want you to die. You are in a bad situation. I'm afraid only Scarlet Island will be able to keep you safe. So why don't you ask His Highness to help you solve this problem? What's the problem between you, the Holy Prefecture, and the Golden Sun Sect? The master of Dayu Palace also smiled. Perhaps I can solve it for you. I promise that they won't come after you. Jian Wushuang, the master of Scarlet Island, urged. He also thought that Jian Wushuang would ask the master of Dayu Palace to end this. Jian Wushuang shook his head slowly. I will personally end this personal dispute between myself, the Holy Prefecture, and Golden Sun Sect. Your Highness shouldn't be bothered by it. Really? The master of Dayu Palace raised his eyebrows. The master of Scarlet Island and the god in white were both surprised. Jian Wushuang signed. During the road to the Dayu Palace, the master of Scarlet Island mentioned that every once in a while Your Highness will give lessons in the Dayu Palace. Those lessons are about cultivation, secret knowledge, and the Tao. Unfortunately, every time you give lessons, only the top geniuses in the Dayu Palace are qualified to attend. Moreover, everyone just has one chance to learn. This time, I had the opportunity. I will use this chance to take one of your lessons. Jian Wushuang's eyes were sparkling. He clenched his fists. Before he had arrived, he had already thought about how he would use this chance. If he used this to ask the master of Dayu Palace to help him solve the dispute between himself, the Holy Prefecture, and the Golden Sun sect, it would be a waste. He needed to be the one to end this thing. He had caused it. Jian Wushuang wanted the opportunity to learn more than he wanted the situation to be resolved. For him, the lesson given by the master of Dayu Palace was an incomparable exchange, especially if it were the one which could teach him how to pass the God test. According to what Qing said, the master of Dayu Palace was a universe god in the third heaven. He had passed the God test. Furthermore, he understood what the God disaster essence was better than any other expert. Now, the hardest difficulty for Jian Wushuang was not the threat from the Holy Prefecture and Golden Sun sect, but his own inverse cultivation disaster. The inverse cultivation disaster was fatal. You want to listen to my lessons? The master of Dayu Palace must have thought Jian Wushuang was weird. Are you sure? Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded solemnly. Hearing this, the master of Dayu Palace and Wu Tsong glanced at each other. With that, the master of Dayu Palace laughed. In that case, I will meet your demand. In 80 years, I will give a lesson. You can attend then. In addition, before I return the Blaze Quicksand Gourd, you can stay at the Dayu Palace. In my palace, there are numerous treasures and manuals. You are my guest now, which means you can use any of them as you wish. Besides, you can exchange opinions with the geniuses and experts in my Dayu Palace if you have the leisure time. Jian Wushuang was surprised by all this. Chapter 1286. I'm ready. Chapter 1286. I'm ready. After the Lord of Dayu Palace and Wu Tsong had retrieved the Blaze Quicksand Gourd, they left quickly. Jian Wushuang, this is your guest token. With this token, you can access most of the cultivating resources. I will arrange a residence for you. Please enjoy cultivating in the following days. The white-clothed universe god said as he handed a guest token to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang took it. The identity of Dayu Palace's guest was important in Dayu world. Jian Wushuang, enjoy your cultivation in Dayu Palace. I have to go. See you. The Lord of Scarlet Island said to him. Thank you. Jian Wushuang nodded. The Lord of Scarlet Island left too. I will show you around and take you to your residence. Let's go. The white-clothed universe god began to show Jian Wushuang around. Dayu Palace was extremely large. It had a lot of places for trial and also treasure pavilions. Inside the treasure pavilion, there were countless treasures and manuals. Jian Wushuang visited these places under the guide of the white-clothed universe god. Because he was a guest, he had access to some cultivating resources in the palace. The white-clothed universe god showed Jian Wushuang around for a long time. Finally, they came to Jian Wushuang's residence. It was a large yard in the middle of a mountain. You can start your cultivation, Jian Wushuang. Contact me directly if you have any questions. 80 years later, I will inform you in advance if our master is about to give a lesson. Thanks a lot. Jian Wushuang said gratefully. As a senior universe god in Dayu Palace, the white-clothed universe god had started following the Lord of Dayu Palace long ago. In a way, the Lord trusted no one more than him. The Lord of Dayu Palace had little time to handle the affair, so the white-clothed universe god was responsible for them. Having seen him off, Jian Wushuang began to make a plan for his 80-year cultivation. He intended to make good use of the rich cultivating resources in Daiyu Palace. 80 years seemed short, but it was enough for Jian Wushuang to improve his strength to a new level. Poof! A figure suddenly appeared in the yard where Jian Wushuang lived. It turned out to be a scarlet-robed young lady who was beautiful and valiant. Her aura spread quickly the moment she appeared. "Hi, who are you?" Jian Wushuang asked in puzzlement as he came to her. "I am Su Dan, an inner disciple from Daiyu Palace." Her eyes sparkled with battle intent. "You must be Jian Wushuang. I've heard of you. Not so long ago, you killed Xiao from Holy Prefecture head-on. The elders of our palace, including the white-clothed universe god, felt amazed. They called you a true genius. They believed you were comparable to universe god Qing from Holy Prefecture. Maybe you are even stronger than him. Now that you are in our palace, I want to take this chance to battle you. Are you ready for it?" "Oh." Jian Wushuang chuckled. He finally understood that Su Dan meant to challenge him. "I'm ready." Jian Wushuang smiled. "Well, this is good. There it is." A glimmer of excitement flashed in Su Dan's eyes. Suddenly, a jet-black long staff appeared in her hand. Bang! As a vast aura surged from Su Dan, she immediately attacked. Su Dan was confident in her strength. She was a universe god at the first realm who had gone through the first god test. Although she was at the elementary level, her staff technique was extremely aggressive, enabling her to confront an ordinary advanced universe god at the first realm. However, she was far less stronger than Jian Wushuang. In an instant, her jet-black long staff was hit away. "You lost!" With the Blood Mountain sword in his hand, Jian Wushuang stood before Su Dan with a smile. It took Su Dan a long time to calm down. She looked back at him and said, "When I heard you killed an advanced universe god at the first realm as a universe master, I thought it was merely by chance. But now I know I'm wrong. My strength is worse than you indeed, but don't get cocky. I rank last among all the inner disciples. A lot of people are stronger than me. What's more, I come to challenge you because I met the white-clothed universe god just now. I'm the first one to challenge you. In the span of a few days, the news that you live here will spread throughout the inner palace, even the whole Daiyu Palace. So many disciples of my inner palace have already heard of you and universe god Qing. I'm sure they will come to challenge you one after another." Jian Wushuang, a great many disciples in our palace, are powerful. Not to mention, there are 10 peat universe gods at the first realm. Things are going to get much harder for you. Su Dan glanced at him mercifully and left. Jian Wushuang stayed where he was, confused. "The inner disciples will come to challenge me one after another?" Jian Wushuang felt strange, but soon understood. The disciples of Daiyu Palace, particularly the inner disciples, are geniuses with talents. Because Daiyu Palace enjoyed a high status in Daiyu world, it was rare for them to be evenly matched. As strong as these inner disciples were, they were never famous in Daiyu world. Jian Wushuang did not hear of any geniuses in Daiyu Palace. Instead, he and universe god Qing from Holy Prefecture gained much fame in Daiyu world. So these talented inner disciples became defiant. Since Jian Wushuang arrived at Daiyu Palace and lived there, they would certainly be able to have a chance. It was normal for them to challenge him one after another. Daiyu Palace was acknowledged as the top palace in Daiyu world. It has much more powerful experts than the 3 overlords. Besides, a group of talented disciples gathers in the inner palace. There are lots of strong universe gods at the first realm. There are even 10 peak universe gods at the first realm. Jian Wushuang said, becoming excited. Come on, come to challenge me. The more the better. The stronger the better. I'm ready. Chapter 1287, 80 years. Chapter 1287, 80 years. Jian Wushuang then resided in Dayu Palace. Whatever happened after was just like how Su Dan said. When those inner disciples in Dayu Palace knew that Jian Wushuang resided there, they immediately came to challenge him. Jian Wushuang, let's battle. Jian Wushuang, I heard that your swordsmanship was extremely great. Even the advanced universe god in the first heaven, Zhuge Qiu, was killed by you with one hit. I happen to be good at sword too. Let's fight a battle. Jian Wushuang, I don't believe that you can kill the advanced universe god in the first heaven with your status as a universe master, unless you win against my saber. There were too many challengers. There were almost 2 to 3 inner disciples that visited him every day, while Jian Wushuang kept an open house, regardless who his opponent was. As long as his capability was of universe god in the first heaven, he would even accept the challenge of a peak universe god from the first heaven. His capability then was almost out of the running if he fought a pitch battle against the peak universe god in the first heaven, but he didn't mind much. In the countless fierce battles, whenever he come across inner disciple whose power died down, he would suppress his strength to compete against their unique skills and their techniques. If his opponents were to be relatively on par with him, or a peak universe god in the first heaven who were stronger than him, he would exert himself to the utmost during the battle. They were merely trying to see what they can learn from each other anyway. They wouldn't really take each other's lives. Even if he were to be defeated by his opponents, the inner disciples who won against him would only tease him, and that wouldn't affect him much. On the contrary, he could accumulate more experience through the battles he went through. He just got to Eternal Chaotic World, and he was really lacking the experience to fight against the universe gods. Besides, he was also training his swordsmanship simultaneously during the vigorous battles. With the cultivation resource in Dayu Palace, Jian Wushuang found a way to enhance his capability. During his time in Dayu Palace, he was never once held up. He was either fighting with the inner disciples in Dayu Palace or constantly learning using the cultivation resource there. The time passed slowly. In Holy Prefecture, the universe god Jiu Hai already found out that Jian Wushuang was living in Dayu Palace. Bastard! That boy possesses treasures that reach the requirement of the master of Dayu Palace. The eyes of the universe god Jiu Hai were gleaming with chill. The master of Dayu Palace passed on a message 300 years ago. As presents to the master of Dayu Palace, the Holy Prefecture sent many realm treasure and secret skills. It was a pity that it didn't reach the requirement of the master of Dayu Palace. But then, the treasure that Jian Wushuang handed in did. Mansion Master Jian Wushuang earned the present of the master of Dayu Palace, and he has been residing in Dayu Palace. We have no way to deal with him. A purple-haired universe god in the Holy Prefecture said. Then, what did he exchange for with his present? Is he asking the master of Dayu Palace to come forward to settle the resentment between him and the Holy Prefecture? The universe god Jiu Hai asked. He didn't. The purple-haired universe god replied. According to the information we obtained from Dayu Palace, Jian Wushuang used the present in exchange for an opportunity to attend a class. Attend a class? The universe god Jiu Hai was surprised. A class taught by the master of Dayu Palace personally? Yes, the purple-haired universe god nodded. Humph. He didn't ask for the master of Dayu Palace to settle the resentment between us, but used it in exchange for a chance to attend a class. This Jian Wushuang is so arrogant. The universe god in the nine oceans smirked. Luckily, he is arrogant. Then, we have the chance to kill him. Go, tell Qing to come here. The universe god in the nine ocean commanded. Time flies. It had been 80 years. In Dayu Palace, in the courtyard where Jian Wushuang resided, there was two figures that flew past swiftly. One wouldn't be able to see their movement with naked eyes. Hua, hua. Two shadows of swords surged in a flash and clashed against each other in no time. At the very moment it clashed, a ray of the sword light dispersed into dozens of fine sword lights and struck like lightning. Dang, 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 dang. Then continuous clashing sounds could be heard. Swoosh, swoosh. The two figures appeared on both ends of the courtyard. Jian Wushuang, your swordsmanship is getting more and more aggressive. A fair-skinned, handsome youth with thin face kept his long sword into its scabbard as he spoke with a bright and clear voice. His voice reverberated within the courtyard. Jian Wushuang retrieved his blood-mountain sword swiftly and flashed a smile when he heard what the handsome youth said. He replied, "Thanks to you, Dong Men, for the lesson that you gave me previously. With the pressure that you gave me, if my swordsmanship were to remain stagnant, wouldn't I come to a bad end?" Jian Wushuang was joking. The handsome youth was one of the inner disciples in Dayu Palace, Universe God Dong Men. Universe God Dong Men was a peak universe god in the first heaven, and his swordsmanship was extremely high. Among the disciples in Dayu Palace, he would be in top 3. He was much stronger than Jian Wushuang in terms of capability. In the past 80 years, there were a large amount of inner disciples that challenged him in the beginning. But as time passed, there were less and less people who came to challenge him. On the contrary, he took an active role in challenging the inner disciples. Among the inner disciples that he challenged, Universe God Dong Men was the strongest of them all. Back when Jian Wushuang had his first battle with Universe God Dong Men, he was defeated miserably. However, after they fought for many times, the time that Jian Wushuang could defend himself against Universe God Dong Men's attack gradually grew longer. Then, although Jian Wushuang was still at disadvantage when he fought with Universe God Dong Men, the discrepancy between their capability wasn't as vast as before. Plus, Universe God Dong Men was good at swordsmanship too. In the process when he fought with Universe God Dong Men, Jian Wushuang was enlightened greatly. During his 80 years of practice, his swordsmanship improved significantly too. Among the biggest improvement was his self-invented unique skills, Nirvana and Chen of Disturbance. They have been constantly improvised in the 80 years. Then, they were already peak rank 1 unique skill. It was a pity that the 2 unique skills couldn't be merged with his Blood Mountain sword. Jian Wushuang, your capability now can almost compare favorably with peak universe god in the first heaven. With such capability, theoretically, you should break through and enter universe god. Why is your god test yet to come? Universe God Dong Men asked. God test? Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded. It's not long since I made a breakthrough to Universe Master. It'd take some time before I undergo the God test. Is it so? Universe God Dong Men nodded and said, You still have a while till your God test, but my God test is coming soon. Huh. Jian Wushuang looked at Universe God Dong Men in shock. 3 days. 3 days later, my God test will arrive. Universe God Dong Men announced. Chapter 1288, Tribulation Passing Pinnacle. Chapter 1288, Tribulation Passing Pinnacle. 3 days? So soon? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Soon. Universe God Dong Men smiled, faintly. I've sensed the coming of the God test 200 years ago. I knew that the God test is coming soon, so I've been preparing for the past 200 years, and I've delayed it for very long. Now, I can't push it any further, so I am preparing to undergo the tribulation in 3 days. Are you confident? Jian Wushuang asked. Confident. Universe God Dong, Men shook his head. I am a universe god in the first heaven. I've passed the God test in the first heaven once. I was well prepared then, and it was quite a smooth process, but this time I am going to undergo the God test in the second heaven. The God test in the second heaven is much tougher than the God test in the first heaven. Although I am well prepared after 200 years, I am only 30% confident that I will pass the God test. 30%. Jiang Wushuang creased his eyebrows. It's already very high to be 30% confident. An ordinary universe god, mostly only about 10 or 20% confident when it comes to the God test in the second heaven. King of Venomous Worm's voice was heard in Jian Wushuang's mind. Jian Wushuang felt helpless too. 30% is really not little. Jian Wushuang, I'm going to undergo God test on Tribulation passing Pinnacle in 3 days. Come over and watch. After all, it is just a matter of time for you to go through it. It'd be beneficial for you to feel the power of the God test ahead of time. Universe God Dong Men said. Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. Universe God Dong Men then returned to prepare himself. The news about Universe God Dong Men undergoing the God test in the second heaven on Tribulation passing Pinnacle spread like wildfire in Dayu Palace. God test, it was a terrifying existence that would cause fear in all universe gods. Not one universe god who wasn't terrified about the God test. Of course, like the master of Dayu Palace, a universe god in the third heaven who already undergone the God test in the third heaven was an exception. In Dayu Palace, there were a lot of universe gods, and most of them were hovering in the first heaven. Hardly any of them transcended to second heaven. Every time there was someone undergoing God test, it would normally attract many universe gods to visit and draw on more experience. After all, watching other people undergoing God test was like accumulating experience for themselves when they undergo God test in the future. 3 days later, on the Tribulation passing Pinnacle, Universe God Dong Men sat cross-legged on the pinnacle all by himself. He closed his eyes faintly in order to indulge himself in his peak state. In the void far from Tribulation passing Pinnacle, a large amount of inner disciples from Dayu Palace stood there in silence. Jian Wushuang was among the crowd. Jian Wushuang, keep your eyes on him. It's rare to be able to see someone undergo God test. Although there is a huge difference between God test and inverse cultivation test, it would be beneficial for you if you could feel the power of the God test and get to be mentally prepared. King of Venomous Worms said. I know. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly, but his gaze was fixed on the figure on the peak of the Tribulation passing Pinnacle that was paying full concentration. Brother Dong Men, you must pass through. Jiang Wushuang murmured. For 80 years, he had been fighting with the inner disciples in Dayu Palace, and there were some who shared good relationship with him. The one that was closest to him was naturally Universe God Dong Men. Jian Wushuang, of course, hoped for him to pass through God test in the second heaven. God test is in the brewing, King of Venomous Worms said. Jian Wushuang also noticed that in the void above the tribunal passing Pinnacle, there was a huge dark cloud that covered the sky entirely. In the dark clouds, there were lightnings striking. There was a terrifying, imposing manner spread from the dark clouds that shook the sky. Such strong force. Jian Wushuang thought to himself. He was far away from the dark clouds, but the force within the dark clouds was felt across the place, and it was daunting. One could well imagine just how pressuring it was for Universe God Dong Men, who stood right below the dark clouds and was fully engulfed by the God's test. Universe Dong Men belongs to a more ordinary cultivation, so it's not that bad. There isn't anything too bizarre. Hence, the God test that he is undergoing is considered a normal thunder test, King of Venomous Worms said. Thunder test. Jian Wushuang was surprised. King of Venomous Worms explained, in Eternal Chaotic World, there are a variety of God tests. The more skillful a practitioner is, the more ferocious the God test that they undergo. However, the God test could simply be categorized into 3 types: thunder test, fire test, and mind test. Among the 3 God tests, thunder test is the most ordinary, followed by fire test, and the mind test is the most terrifying one. Universe God Dong Men is facing the ordinary thunder test. With his capability, if he was well prepared, the possibility of his success is not low. Jian Wushuang nodded in agreement, then suddenly asked oddly, "My inverse cultivation test, would it be one of those?" Inverse cultivation test. Most that I know of are, but yours might not be. In short, even if it was, you would definitely be dealing with the most terrifying mind test, King of Venomous Worms replied. Jian Wushuang was left speechless. He didn't pursue further, but looked forward attentively. In the void above the tribunal passing Pinnacle, the force within the dark clouds was getting more ferocious. Even though there was a long distance, the universe gods by the side were terrified too. Everyone was holding their breath. The God test has finished brewing. It's going to start soon. King of Venomous Worms said. On the peak of tribunal passing Pinnacle, Universe God Dong Men, who had his eyes closed most of the time, noticed the movement in the void above. He suddenly lifted his head, and there was a sharp flash. "Come on!" Universe God Dong Men looked ferocious, and there was an unprecedented craziness that surged in his eyes. Rumble! There was a bolt from the blue with a tremendous noise. From among the huge dark cloud, there was a faint gold lightning that descended. The faint gold lighting looked light in color, but consisted terrifying power to break the sky and shatter the earth. The lightning descended and struck at Universe God Dong Men directly. The veins on Universe God Dong Men's forehead stood out, and the divine power in his body was surging and erupting without holding back. Break! Universe God Dong Men roared and swung his sword. The entire universe turned dark all of a sudden. A huge sword shadow became extremely significant in the dark. It was extremely swift too. It skimmed over the faint gold lighting in the blink of an eye. That is, for Jian Wushuang, who was watching from afar, his pupil dilated at the split second. He fought vigorously with Universe God Dong Men many times, and he knew of Universe God Dong Men's capability. Universe God Dong Men was putting his most powerful, unique skill that he had invented to play. Universe God Dong Men straightway used his secret skill along with his most powerful, unique skill. Jian Wushuang was surprised, but he creased his eyebrows. But would that be enough to defend him from the lightning? Although the faint gold lightning wasn't directed to Jian Wushuang, his soul power felt it long ago. The power of that faint gold lightning was definitely not any weaker than a full-force attack by a universe god in the second heaven. Chapter 1289, The Power of God Test. Chapter 1289, The Power of God Test. Rumble. When everyone was holding the breath, the faint gold lightning that descended from the dark clouds finally collided directly with the swordsmanship that Universe God Dong Men had put to play. After a tremendous noise, everyone saw that the ground of Tribulation passing Pinnacle caved in, while Universe God Dong Men fell into the bottom of the pit. He stood up after a while, but his clothes were all torn and turned black. Even his originally fair skin became dark. He was covered in blood, and his aura was extremely weak. He survived. Jian Wushuang was beaming with joy. Don't be too happy, just yet. It was merely the first strike. King of Venomous Worms said, Universe God Dongmen is undergoing his God test in the second heaven, so there are 2 levels of lightning. The very first one earlier was weaker. The second lightning would be much stronger than the first one, which is the real threat to him. If I were him, I would seize the time before the second lightning descends and take an elixir to recover, so that my body can resume to my peak. Then, I could be well prepared for the second lightning. Jian Wushuang's face grew solemn. Under Jian Wushuang's gaze, Universe God Dongmen, who was on the peak of the tribunal passing Pinnacle, sat down and straightway took in the few elixirs that he had prepared. Those elixirs were prepared for him to pass through the God test. Among them, there was an extremely precious elixir, tribunal passing elixir. Universe God Dongmen took them all in a mouthful. With the power of the elixirs, Universe God Dongmen's aura recovered swiftly. He resumed to his peak in a short time. Not bad. He is well prepared. King of Venomous Worms joked. Dongmen has recovered to his peak state. It seems like the possibility of him passing through the second lightning should be quite high, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. In the void above tribunal passing Pinnacle, among the huge dark cloud, the second lightning continued to store up its strength. Along with the accumulation, the force within the dark clouds were growing strong, even a little too ridiculously strong. The universe god from Dayu Palace felt the force, and they creased their eyebrows. What is going on? Even though it is the second lightning, isn't this force a little too strong? It is a little too strong. When I undergo my God test in the second heaven, the force of the second lightning wasn't this strong. The force grew stronger, so doesn't it mean that the second lightning would be even more powerful? Why would it be so? Many faces of the universe gods in Dayu Palace grew grave. They could tell that the power of the second lightning was a little over, but they couldn't change anything even though they were anxious. God test, under normal situation, should be passed through alone. Although one could assist by force, once assistance was provided to pass through God test, both the person who was helped and the person who helped would be restrained in terms of growth. It would be impossible for both person to pass through their God test in the future. Hence, even though they knew Universe God Dongmen was in danger, no one dared to help. There was no one who could help. I thought Universe God Dongmen would be dealing with ordinary God test, but from the looks of it, it doesn't seem like it. King of Venomous Worms said. What do you mean? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. I'm not sure, but it might be because of the massacre that he once caused. King of Venomous Worms replied. Massacre? Jian Wushuang stunned. Massacre would affect God test too. Of course, King of Venomous Worms explained, the more massacre there is, especially those that involved many innocent lives, it would affect God test accordingly. For instance, the people in Holocaust sect, they often slaughter massively and refined millions and millions of living things in order to build up their strength. Hence, the God tests that they need to pass through would be extremely terrifying too. Universe God Dongmen should have once caused a massacre when he was young. Is it so? Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. Just like how King of Venomous Worms had said, Universe God Dongmen once had an accident when he first sprang up in his hometown. He was once a mad demon, and he killed many innocent people during that period of time. Hence, the record of massacre. Later on, even though he stabled down, it heavily affected the God test that he was going through. When he passed through the God test in the first heaven, the massacre that he caused didn't affect the God test much. However, when it came to the God test in the second heaven, it finally took shape. It seemed that Universe God Dong Men was afraid of trouble. King of Venomous Worms said. Jian Wushuang looked solemn. Universe God Dong Men stood on the peak of Tribunal passing Pinnacle and already recovered to his tip-top condition. He lifted his head and stared into the void above. His eyes were full of insanity. Among the dark clouds, the second lightning had done storing up its strength. The terrifying force spread across long ago. Finally, the second lightning descended. Previously, the first lightning was merely faint gold, but the second lightning was gilded. The gilded lightning struck directly while Universe God Dong Men flipped his hand, and a black turtle shell appeared. The black turtle shell gave out an ancient aura. Along with Universe God Dong Men's willpower, the black turtle shell started expanding and covered his entire body. Universe God Dong Men himself had a pair of eyes gleaming with lightning while his entire body was giving free rein of divine power. He was giving all his strength to put his strongest swordsmanship to play. Bang! The power of the lightning set off, and it shattered the sword light that Universe God Dong Men gave out. Along with the explosion, the sword in his hand was casted off that instant. On the other hand, the gilded lightning continued to strike at Universe God Dong Men without hesitation. At the most crucial moment, it hit the black turtle shell on Universe God Dong Men. The black turtle shell presented its impressive protective power and endured the power of the gilded lightning. It didn't break directly under the hit. That sight shocked various universe gods that were spectating. Universe God Dong Men has such a treasure with him. That turtle shell should be a very impressive chaotic treasure, right? It provides quite good of a protection. Protection by the turtle shell. It seems that Dong Men should be fine. Universe gods from Dayu Palace let out a sigh of relief. Just then, no, a loud scream was heard from the peak of Tribunal passing Pinnacle, and everyone looked over. They saw that an unprecedented terror across Universe God Dong Men's face. Just as everyone thought he would survive the second lightning, no one noticed that there was a fine emerald flame within the second lightning, which broke through the defense of the turtle shell and ravaged Universe God Dong Men's body. The emerald flame looked extremely weak, as though it was going to die out any time. But the moment it made contact with Universe God Dong Men's body, vroom, the emerald flame suddenly soared, and Universe God Dong Men never made any other noise anymore. He was engulfed by the emerald flame entirely and suddenly vanished like smoke. Universe God Dong Men died. Chapter 1290, Qing Yang's here. Chapter 1290, Qing Yang's here. Rumble. The dark clouds in the sky dispersed, and the god test, too, subsided entirely. But on Tribunal passing Pinnacle, including the surrounding void, was deadly silent. It was silent as the grave, where one would be able to hear a pin drop. Universe gods from Dayu Palace, including Jian Wushuang, saw what happened earlier clearly, but everyone was left speechless. The transformation took place too quickly. When they saw that the black turtle shell on Universe God Dong Men's body resisted the gilded lighting, they subconsciously thought that there's hope for Universe God Dong Men to pass through the God's test. Who would have thought that Universe God Dong Men would vanish into thin air the very next moment? That's fire test. A universe god in the second heaven from Dayu Palace who was knowledgeable spoke, and the void suddenly became noisy. It was really a fire test. King of Venomous Worms' voice was heard in Jian Wushuang head too. It was also a god's test, but fire test is more terrifying by a few folds as compared to the thunder test. The second lightning that Universe God Dong Men dealt with consisted of slight fire test. Although it wasn't complete, it went through the defense of black turtle shell and killed him. Jian Wushuang felt heavy-hearted. He was quite close to universe god Dongmen. To see him ended up like that, Jian Wushuang naturally felt a heartache. That was the consequence of failing to pass through God test. King of Venomous Worms said coldly, "In any cultivation, universe gods are walking through gate of hell at this state. They are required to walk through it thrice. Once they pass through thrice, they could become the real top expert. But the 3 god tests, one might die if they were to fail any of the god tests." Jian Wushuang heard and shook his head in silence. The pressure that he carried became heavier. Merely God test itself was known to be a situation which 1 survived, but 9 died, just like universe god Dongmen, who was already in the first heaven, well prepared, and even protected by the black turtle shell, ended up vanishing into thin air due to God test. But Jian Wushuang was going to undergo inverse cultivation test, which was few times more terrifying than the God test. Universe god Dongmen failed to pass the God test in the second heaven and ended up vanishing into thin air. Although the outcome saddened many of them, they have no choice but to accept it. It was a God test, after all. Every universe god had to face it. The crowd surrounding the tribunal passing Pinnacle dispersed very soon. Everyone was in distress when they left. Jian Wushuang left tribunal passing Pinnacle too, and returned to the courtyard where he stayed. He just returned, and he received a message from the White Sector god. "Jian Wushuang, the palace master sent a message to you. You shall be prepared for a class at Fairy Palace in a month's time." "It's happening." Jian Wushuang clasped his hands together and began to look forward to the class. Jian Wushuang witnessed the dreadful God test with his own eyes, and he was dying to obtain some experience of passing through God test from the master of Dayu Palace. A month's time passed by quickly. In Fairy Palace, Dayu Palace. The Fairy Palace was where the master of Dayu Palace teaches. It was a majestic hall. The Fairy Palace was normally closed, but only opened when the master of Dayu Palace teaches. In front of the Fairy Palace, Jian Wushuang arrived ahead of time and waited patiently. Then, there were 3 other people next to him. Jian Wushuang knew the 3 of them. They were all inner disciples of Dayu Palace, and they were the utmost excellent ones, especially the leader among the 3, the youth with evil charm who was in a red robe. The youth with evil charm was called Xiao. He was generally recognized as the top among all inner disciples in Dayu Palace, a definite genius. There were many universe gods in the first heaven in the palace, and Xiao was considered the first in capability. Even universe god Dongmen, who failed to pass through the god's test and fell, was a notch below as compared to Xiao. "You are Jian Wushuang?" Xiao looked at Jian Wushuang and asked. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. "I always hear people talking about you in Dayu. They say that your talent is no weaker compared to universe god Qing from Holy Prefecture. It's a pity that you are still a universe master. After you break through and become a universe god, I'd be delighted to meet up with you," Xiao said with a smile. Jian Wushuang lifted his eyebrows. Xiao had been traveling around and only rushed back 2 days ago. Hence, he didn't have the chance to fight him. From the sound of it, Xiao obviously meant that Jian Wushuang, who was of universe master level, couldn't spike any interest. Xiao was stronger than universe god Dongmen. Although I have improved tremendously over the past 80 years, I could barely fight against a peak universe god in the first heaven. I could only run for my life when I fight against universe god Dongmen. If I were to fight against Xiao, I am really not his match. Jian Wushuang knew where he stood. Just then, there were 2 figures that flew over from the void before them. Then, they landed in front of the Fairy Palace. Among the two of them, one was the white sector god, who was in charge of all affairs within Dayu Palace, and the other one was a purple-haired youth who dressed luxuriantly and looked handsome. Huh. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows and couldn't help but looked at the purple-haired youth. He lit his soul fire. His sensitivity to soul power was much stronger compared to everyone else at the scene. He could clearly feel that although the purple-haired youth was merely a universe god in the first heaven, the hidden aura was extraordinarily fierce. It was much stronger than any other universe god in the first heaven that Jian Wushuang had come across. Even if compared to the number one inner disciple in Dayu Palace, Xiao, the purple-haired youth, seemed to be slightly superior. In Dayu world, stronger than Xiao among the universe gods in the first heaven would he be. Jian Wushuang's pupils dilated in shock as he could guess who the other person was. While Xiao and the other two inner disciples of Dayu Palace, too, fixed their gazes at the purple-haired youth. Universe god Qing. Xiao's voice was cold, but the aura in his body was surging. That's right. The person gained fame in Dayu world long ago and had always been known as the number one genius in Dayu world, universe god Qing. Universe god Qing Yen had yet to live more than 50,000 years as of then. But in the 50,000 years, he had risen in a massacre. He created a legend in the bloodbath. Not only was his cultivation period extremely short, but his fighting power was also extremely ferocious. He was merely a universe master then, but he was generally recognized as the number one in Dayu world. When he passed through his god's test and became universe god in the first heaven, he was known as the strongest among universe gods in the first universe. Just as Jian Wushuang had yet to rise up, there wasn't any genius in Dayu world who could be compared to him. Just like the inner disciples in Dayu Palace, many of them were geniuses, but none of them were as dazzling as universe god Qing. Even Xiao, who was the most impressive among the inner disciples, was slightly inferior compared to universe god Qing in terms of rising time and dazzling level. Xiao thirsted to vie with universe god Qing to see who was better, but he never had a chance to. Then he finally saw universe god Qing in person. Chapter 1291, Class. Chapter 1291, Class. This is universe god Qing from the Holy Prefecture. Like you, he is here to attend the Palace Master's class. The white sector god said. Oh. Xiao and the other two inner disciples were surprised. The master of Dayu Palace hardly taught any classes, and most of the time, only the few most outstanding disciples in Dayu Palace would be qualified to attend. But here were two outsiders for his class. Forget about Jian Wushuang. He had obtained the master of Dayu Palace's favor after all. He exchanged presents for an opportunity to attend his class. But as for universe god Qing, Xiao and the other two disciples quickly understood that the fact that universe god Qing could attend the class was definitely due to a huge price paid by the Holy Prefecture. The famous universe god Qing, that great name has long resounded in my ears. Xiao said in a cold voice, the number one in Dayu Palace. I've heard about you too. Universe god Qing smiled. After Palace Master's class, right here in Dayu Palace, let's have a fight. What do you think? Xiao asked in a deep voice. Of course. Universe god Qing nodded. With a simple exchange, the two of them had arranged a fight. From the beginning till the end, universe god Qing didn't even look at Jian Wushuang. That made him feel rather strange. Maybe universe god Qing thought so highly of himself that he didn't bother with Jian Wushuang. But he can't ignore the fact that Jiu Shi, who was killed by Jian Wushuang, was his junior disciple. Jian Wushuang killed universe god Qing Yang's junior, but he didn't react at all, when he saw Jian Wushuang. Although Jian Wushuang was confused, he wasn't bothered much. They waited for a little longer in front of the fairy palace until the gates finally opened. "Go in. The palace master is waiting for you inside," the white sector god said. Jian Wushuang, universe god Qing, Xiao, and the other two talented inner disciples entered the hall without hesitation. The five of them entered the hall, and the entrance closed behind them. The hall was extremely spacious. There were 5 cattail hassocks right in the middle of the hall, and there was a sage-like elderly covered in white hair seated right at the uppermost position in the hall. Jian Wushuang and the other 4 attendants immediately showed humble reverence and contentiously sat down on the 5 cattail hassocks in unison. After the 5 of them took their seats, the master of Dayu Palace opened his eyes. The incense burner by the side of the hall, too, started burning, and there was a faint aroma that filled the air. In the delicate aroma, the master of Dayu Palace started the class straight away. He started directly with his experience of passing through the God test. The master of Dayu Palace had exceptional understanding towards the God test. Even the king of venomous worms in Jian Wushuang's body didn't understand the God test as well as the master of Dayu Palace, especially when it came to the details. The details were the most important part. Those that seemed insignificant became vital at crucial moments. Jian Wushuang, universe god Qing, Xiao, and the other 2 disciples sat on the cattail hassocks while they listened attentively, in fear of missing one single word. The 5 of them had to pass through God test in the 2nd and even the 3rd heaven. The experience that the master of Dayu Palace was sharing was especially meaningful for them. When the master of Dayu Palace shared his experience, he sounded very skillful too. He first started with 3 different kinds of God test. 3 kinds of the God test: thunder test, fire test, mind test. The master of Dayu Palace first talked about the thunder test. He brought up the changes of the thunder test and also countless details. It was actually extremely complicated, but he made it easy to understand. Then, the master of Dayu Palace talked about the fire test. When practitioners undergo the God test, the probability of coming across the fire test is extremely low. Universe god Dong Men once started a massacre when he was in his demonic state. Hence, he faced the fire test, but it was a rather mild fire test, and it was barely complete. However, it still took universe god Dong Men's life. One could imagine how scary the fire test would be. The master of Dayu Palace once underwent a complete fire test. Hence, he had high understanding about fire test. At this very moment, he was conducting a class to share. Only the mind test remained among the 3 kinds of God test. The master of Dayu Palace talked about the thunder test and fire test in details, but he merely spent a short time on the mind test before it ended. Obviously, the master of Dayu Palace had never come across a mind test, so he didn't know much about it. The time flew past. The master of Dayu Palace used 3 days and 3 nights in total for the entire class. He spent 2 days and 2 nights solely for sharing details about his experience in the God test. As for the remaining 1 day and 1 night, the master of Dayu Palace talked about issues regarding cultivation. As 3 days and 3 nights passed by, the incense burner stopped burning too. The class ended then too. Even though the time was short, Jian Wushuang reflected on his sharing repeatedly. Phew! Jian Wushuang was still seated on the cattail hassock as he let out a breath of relief. There was a delighted smile on his face. The few others shared a similar expression to Jian Wushuang. They had benefited greatly. Although it was merely a short 3-day span, everyone was duly rewarded, especially regarding their understanding towards the God tests. If they were only 20% confident of passing through God test before, they definitely were 30% or more confident of being able to pass through the God test after the master of Dayu Palace shared his experience and the details with them. As for the problem regarding cultivation, they, too, were greatly helped. Qian Wushuang, now you know how big the difference is between having an expert to give pointers and fumbling about alone blindly. The king of venomous worms' voice was heard in Jian Wushuang's head. The master of Dayu Palace is only a universe god in the third heaven, and he was only conducting a class casually. But you benefited greatly from it. If you were to be in the lineage of stars headquarters, there is existence that is much stronger than the master of Dayu Palace among lineage of star. Maybe you could be formally apprenticed to one of the experts. Then you would receive even greater benefit. Jian Wushuang kept quiet, but he understood deep down in his heart. The master of Dayu Palace had casually conducted a class, and it was so useful to him. If he were to stay back in lineage of Star's Nest, he would definitely receive more resources and more pointers from the experts with his identity of a disciple in Star Palace. It's a pity that you won't be able to return to the lineage of Star anytime soon. Plus, you will have to undergo your inverse cultivation test in the first heaven soon. You're lucky enough to have the master of Dayu Palace to give you pointers now, King of Venomous Worms said. Jian Wushuang was contented. From what he saw, using a present in exchange for attending the master of Dayu Palace's class was definitely worthwhile. After the class, the master of Dayu Palace brought the 5 of them to a huge, vacant lot outside Fairy Palace. White Sector God and many other inner disciples were waiting there. Palace Master, according to your instructions, our inner disciples in Dayu Palace who have faster comprehension have already gathered here, White Sector God said. The master of Dayu Palace nodded faintly. Chapter 1292, The Little Scattered Stars Game. Chapter 1292, The Little Scattered Stars Game. On the vacant lot, Jian Wushuang and the others were confused. They didn't understand what the master of Dayu Palace had gathered the disciples of quick comprehension together for. I received an interesting arrangement of chess pieces on a chessboard in a secret land not long ago. There are in total of 100 steps in the chess game, and every step equals a test. In other words, 100 steps equal 100 tests. Today, I'm going to use that particular arrangement of chess pieces on the chessboard to test the comprehension level of the inner disciples in Dayu Palace. The master of Dayu Palace finished and waved his hand. A huge game of chess appeared from nowhere in the vacant lot before them. The most interesting part was that there were only black chess pieces, no white ones. There were 100 black pieces in total. Everyone on the vacant lot lifted their heads and looked at the chess simultaneously. This chess game. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows slightly. He remembered when he first came to Dayu Palace. The White Sector God once told him that Lord Wutsang had been studying a chess game strategy intensively with the master of Dayu Palace. Would it be the chess arrangement before him? King of Venomous Worms in Jian Wushuang's body laughed when he saw the chess arrangement. I see. It's this chess arrangement. No wonder it said that I meant for testing one's comprehension level. King of Venomous Worms, you know the origins of this chess arrangement? Jian Wushuang asked. Of course, King of Venomous Worms laughed. This chess arrangement has an impressive history. In the entire eternal chaotic world, even in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries, it is very famous. Very famous in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries. Jian Wushuang was shocked. The 10 cultivation sanctuaries were the core of the eternal chaotic world, a place full of experts. It was different to a kingdom, different to the world that he was in. This chess arrangement is called the Little Scattered Stars Game. The person that created it is a supreme man. King of Venomous Worms said. Supreme. Jian Wushuang stared. He found out from King of Venomous Worms long ago that only a superb existence, like the creator of Lineage of Star and King Luozhan, would be impressive enough to be referred to as supreme. The chess arrangement before him was by a superb expert of that level. That supreme man created 2 sets of chess arrangement. One is the little scattered stars game that you're looking at right now, and there is another one called the Great Scattered Stars game. The Little Scattered Stars game only has 100 moves. It isn't too valuable. The Great Scattered Stars game has a total of 10,000 moves. That is the really terrifying and unpredictable game. King of Venomous Worms exclaimed, "Of course, for your level of cultivation as of now, the Little Scattered Stars game is impressive enough." Jian Wushuang, the master of Dayu Palace, took this out, and he should give you a chance to solve it. You must seize the opportunity to study how to solve this game. The game is said to be testing one's comprehension level, but in actual fact, it contains a significant element of luck. The more moves you resolve, the higher the possibility that you get a lucky chance. Is that so? Jian Wushuang's pupils dilated, and he began to look forward to it. After the master of Dayu Palace took out the Little Scattered Stars game, he looked around. He first looked towards Universe God Qing. Qing, previously when Holy Prefecture wanted to send you to attend my class, I refused. The reason why I have made an exception is due to this chess game. I would like to see if you, known as the #1 genius in Dayu world, can solve many moves in 10 years' time. 10 years? Jian Wushuang was shocked. He could tell that it would take 10 years to resolve the Little Scattered Stars game. I will try my best. Universe God Qing replied. The master of Dayu Palace smiled and looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang. Palace Master, Jian Wushuang bowed politely. You're extremely gifted. Maybe you wouldn't be any weaker compared to Qing. It's a pity that you are merely a universe master. To solve the chess game as a universe master, you shouldn't be able to solve too many moves. However, I will give you an opportunity to solve this chess game. You will have the same time as the rest, 10 years. Seize the opportunity. The master of Dayu Palace said. Thank you, Palace Master. Jian Wushuang replied, nodding calmly but being inwardly delighted. All right, I already told White Sector God to prepare a secret room for each of you. Every secret room has the exact same chess game for you to solve. All of you have 10 years' time. As for what kind of lucky chance you could get during the 10 years' time of solving the chess game, it solely depends on your choices. Go ahead. The master of Dayu Palace waved. On the vacant lot, many of the inner disciples of Dayu Palace started moving, including Jian Wushuang. However, there were 2 people that didn't move on the lot. The 2 people were Universe God Qing and Xiao. Universe God Qing, frankly speaking, I am unhappy about you being recognized as the #1 genius in Dayu world. As we have to see who wins and who loses, we shall begin our match with this chess game, Xiao said as he looked at Universe Qing. What do you want to do? Universe God Qing smiled faintly. Very simple. We don't have to go into the secret room. Both of us resolve this chess game in front of the Palace Master, in front of all experts in Dayu Palace. We shall see who resolve more moves in 10 years' time. How about that? Xiao said, right here on the vacant lot. Universe God Qing was surprised. The surrounding inner disciples in Dayu Palace were extremely shocked as well. It was known that the chess game was unfathomable. They definitely had to be calm if they wanted to solve it. It'd be best if they weren't influenced by the outside world, so to resolve the chess game in the standalone secret room would be the best choice. But if they were to solve the chess game on the vacant lot directly. They could see the move that the other person play. During the process of solving the chess game, their speed might be affected. Why? Are you scared? Xiao said in a forceful way. Hee, you have the guts to. Why don't I? Universe God Qing smiled in reply. Okay, let's resolve the chess game on this vacant lot then. Xiao saw that Universe God Qing agreed, and he immediately revealed a smile. The surrounding inner disciples watched. Those two, Jian Wushuang shook his head when he saw Universe God Qing and Xiao. Hee, all geniuses. It's a pity that they had such a good life, that they've become arrogant. King of Venomous Worms smiled. Exactly, Jian Wushuang commented. They seem dazzling, but in actual fact, they have had too smooth of a life. Jian Wushuang was different from the two of them. Although he had not been cultivating for long, he had been rising abruptly under adverse circumstances. Not long after he was born, he had begun experiencing countless life and death situations. He had never had a great life. Jian Wushuang, they are competing against each other. You are also as famous as Universe God Qing in Daiyu World. You don't want to join them for the competition? King of Venomous Worms joked. I'm not interested. Jian Wushuang shook his head and walked towards the secret room under the lead of White Sector God. Chapter 1293, Resolved. Chapter 1293, Resolved. In the standalone secret room, Jian Wushuang sat before the little scattered stars game. On the chessboard sat 100 black chess pieces. Jian Wushuang looked at the first black chess piece and covered it with his soul power. Suddenly, the surrounding scene underwent tremendous change. It became a barren land covered in snow, and there was a figure in a white robe at the forefront. The instant Jian Wushuang saw the figure in the white robe, that figure suddenly drew a sword and dashed forward at his throat with an extremely sharp blade. That sword was as swift as lightning, and it was extremely cold. Jian Wushuang lifted his eyebrows and wanted to resist the hit with his unique skill, but he realized that he couldn't feel any Tao in this boundless snow world. The unique skill that he created was based on his 3 strongest sword principles. His unique skills couldn't be put to use at all when he didn't have Tao. Unable to feel the existence of Tao, and unable to give full force to his unique skill, Jian Wushuang could only rely on his understanding about swordsmanship to defend himself. Clang! Both hits collided, and before Jian Wushuang could counterattack, he had already retreated from the boundless snow world. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded. King of Venomous Worms, what is going on? Jian Wushuang asked curiously. What's going on? It's because of the move you didn't resolve earlier. King of Venomous Worms laughed in disdain. Jian Wushuang, the little scattered stars game was created by the Supreme Man. It's extremely intriguing. The chess arrangement itself was designed for a practitioner. As you are a sword principle cultivator, you naturally are required to resolve sword movement in the chess arrangement. Sword movement. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows and recalled the sharp yet cool sword movement that the figure in the white robe had displayed. That swing was really an extremely threatening sword movement. You mean I have to resolve that sword movement? Jian Wushuang asked. Yeah, it isn't like you'd be done without doing anything but resisting. You have to counterattack or break your opponent's sword movement. You understand? King of Venomous Worms explained. Of course I understand that, but the sword movement that the person in white pulled contained a sword principle. He could obviously feel the existence of the sword principle, but I couldn't feel the 3 strongest sword principle that I set up. How can I resolve this? Jian Wushuang asked in a deep voice. Who says you can't resolve the sword movement if you can't feel the sword principle? King of Venomous Worms said. Jian Wushuang was stunned and suddenly lifted his head. Yeah, if there wasn't the existence of the sword principle, the swordsmanship of the figure in white couldn't be resolved. Jian Wushuang's eyes were beaming with light, glimmering like a blade. Jian Wushuang, you have been fighting with many people on a daily basis with a combination of swordsmanship and sword principle, but most of the time, you relied on your sword principle too much. Hence, you forget the nature of swordsmanship. What the Little Scattered Stars game is testing is the nature of swordsmanship. It's testing whether you could defeat swordsmanship that contained sword principle without relying on sword principle yourself, and even without swordsmanship. King of Venomous Worms said, "Swordsmanship. Nature. I understand." Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. "It's great that you understood. Under normal circumstances, you could hardly abandon sword principle and focus on training in the nature of swordsmanship. You rarely have a chance to, even if you could ignore sword principles on your own, but due to the 3 strongest sword principles that you set up, your swordsmanship naturally comes together with sword principles. The Little Scattered Stars game gave you this opportunity. This opportunity is hard to come by. You have to grasp it and try to resolve as many moves as possible." King of Venomous Worms said, "The master of Dayu Palace said that you are only a universe master, and you wouldn't be able to resolve many steps. It makes sense because the Little Scattered Stars game is influenced by the practitioners, but you are doing inverse cultivation. The inverse cultivation in Universe Master level is actually at the same starting point with the Universe Gods in the first heaven. Hence, the moves that you can resolve might not be any lower than them. Not to mention that your comprehension level is better. That's why you definitely have a possibility of resolving more moves than the others. 10 years' time. Work hard." Hearing what King of Venomous Worms said, Jian Wushuang let out a sigh with a strange gaze in his eyes. The next moment, he looked towards the Little Scattered Stars game before him. Soon, Jian Wushuang was absorbed in resolving the sword movement. When Jian Wushuang was resolving the Little Scattered Stars game, Universe God Qing and Xiao were sitting side by side on the vacant lot outside of the fairy palace before a set of chess. The 2 of them started resolving the chess game before anyone else. The 2 of them were fighting against each other as they were resolving the chess game. They quickly found ways and solutions to resolve the game. Merely a day later, there was a black chess piece that suddenly dispersed before Xiao's chess set. The dispersal of black chess piece meant that the first move had been resolved. Xiao has already resolved the first move. It has only been a day. Universe God Qing has yet to resolve the first move. The surrounding inner disciples from Dayu Palace, including the experts that had rushed over, were all looking at their match. At the entrance of the fairy palace, the master of Dayu Palace was seated on the throne. Wu Tsang had already rushed to the scene as well, and he took a seat next to the master of Dayu Palace. Everyone fixed their gazes at the match before them. When Xiao was the first to resolve the first move, Wu Tsang revealed a smile. "Solved the first move on the first day. Your disciple in Dayu Palace is not too shabby." Of course, the master of Dayu Palace smiled faintly. Just as Xiao resolved the first move, the first black chess piece disappeared from the chessboard before Universe God Qing. Obviously, he had also resolved the first move. "Your speed is too slow." Xiao stole a glance at Universe God Qing. "This is only the first move. What are you so anxious for?" Universe God Qing smiled, unfazed. After all, the Little Scattered Scar game had a total of 100 moves, and they had a time span of 10 years to solve it. So what if he fell behind on the first move? The 2 of them didn't talk much, but continued to solve the game. The time passed by slowly. On the 3rd day of solving the Little Scattered Stars game, Jian Wushuang, who was in the secret room, finally opened his eyes and the corner of his lips lifted. I spent 3 days, and I finally resolved the first move in the little scattered stars game. Jian Wushuang smiled. Humph. You only solved the first day after 3 days. Your speed is too slow. King of Venomous Worms snorted. From what I know, there are many geniuses that solved the first move the first time they saw the chess set. It's my first time adapting to an environment without sword principle. It's inevitable that my speed is slower until I get used to it. The efficiency will also be different. I have 10 years' time. Why are you so nervous? Jian Wushuang didn't seem bothered, but he quickly closed his eyes again and started resolving the second sword movement. Chapter 1294, Compete. Chapter 1294, Compete. The further the little scattered stars game progressed, the more difficult it became. When it was merely the first move, it wasn't difficult for any of them. The time flew past. On the vacant lot before the fairy palace, the match between universe god Qing and Xiao was still ongoing before everyone's eyes. The 10th move. Xiao already resolved the 10th move. It has only been a month. Universe god Qing, he solved the 10th move as well. Impressive. The two of them are very impressive. However, Xiao is faster in resolving the move as compared to universe god Qing. Many inner disciples of Dayu Palace were gathered there to watch the match attentively. One was universe god Qing, while the other one was the most talented in Dayu Palace, Xiao. Of course, they wished to see Xiao defeat universe god Qing. That's why, when Xiao was at an advantageous position during the beginning of the match, the inner disciples of Dayu Palace were delighted. In the first month, universe god Qing already resolved the 10th move, while Jian Wushuang, who was in the secret room, had only just resolved the 7th move. Jian Wushuang was obviously slower in speed. When it came to the 11th move, it became significantly more difficult. Previously, universe god Qing and Xiao resolved one move every 2 to 3 days. But after the 10th, they would require at least a dozen days to resolve one move. A year later, universe god Qing and Xiao resolved the 22nd move one after another, while Jian Wushuang was still lingering on the 18th move. On the 3rd year, universe god Qing and Xiao resolved the 26th move, but they were both stuck at the 27th move. Then, Jian Wushuang was resolving the 24th move. On the 4th year, universe god Qing and Xiao resolved the 27th move, but then Jian Wushuang had already resolved the 26th move. In the 5th year, when universe god Qing and Xiao were in a bind on the 28th move, Jian Wushuang resolved the 28th move and was already trying to resolve the 29th move. However, everyone in Dayu Palace, including the master of Dayu Palace, was enchanted by the match between universe god Qing and Xiao. Plus, Jian Wushuang was merely a universe master, and as such was limited under normal circumstances. He wouldn't be able to resolve many moves. So, no one was paying attention at Jian Wushuang. Naturally, no one knew that Jian Wushuang in the secret room resolved more moves in the 5th year compared to the two geniuses on the vacant lot. In the 60th year, Jian Wushuang in the secret room opened his eyes and flashed a smile, while the 30th black chess piece disappeared from the chess set before him. The 30th move resolved. King of Venomous Worms, the way you taught me is quite effective. Although the moves in the little scattered stars games became more and more difficult, I wasn't struggling. Jian Wushuang smiled. Humph, don't you know who I am? King of Venomous Worms said proudly. When I followed King Luozhen in the eternal chaotic world back then, I saw the great scattered stars game. I naturally know how to make use of the little scattered stars game. The little scattered stars game focuses on the nature of swordsmanship, but the nature of swordsmanship emphasizes accumulation. To solve the little scattered stars game, the most important thing to be avoided is impatience. You must take it slowly, in the process of accumulation during resolving the sword moves. Even if you are capable of solving the move, you should try another way to resolve it. Advance and consolidate at every step. Make a move steadily and surely. Then you'll be able to experience more and accumulate more. Even though the moves would become more and more difficult, as long as you have time, you would be able to resolve it slowly. If you were to be impatient and wanted to solve more moves in a short time, you would be restricted. You might end up being held up by one of the moves for a very long time, just like reaching a bottleneck in cultivation. Is that how it is? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Ever since he started to resolve the little scattered stars, he had been following King of Venomous Worms' guidance and resolved the moves slowly but steadily. Sometimes he could resolve the moves quickly, but he would spend more time on the solution in order to accumulate more. As a result, he wasn't fast in resolving the moves in the beginning. He was even considered slow. However, the more experience he accumulated, the hidden sword movement in the following moves became less of a hindrance for him. From his first move until the 30th move, he felt that success was assured as the condition was ripened. It's a pity that you only have 10 years to resolve the little scattered stars game. If you were to be given sufficient time, even if you are merely a universe master, you could resolve 40 or even 50 moves as long as you proceed steadily and surely according to my method. But now, King of Venomous Worms let out a sigh. Jian Wushuang, 6 years have passed. There are only 4 years left. In the first 2 of the remaining years, you will continue to resolve the moves according to the method I taught you. For the latter 2 years, you should resolve as many moves as possible without scruples. I understand. Jian Wushuang nodded and immediately continued to resolve the 31st move. On the vacant lot in front of Fairy Palace, when it came to the 6th year, the match took a dramatic change. At first, when they started to resolve the little scattered stars game, Xiao had been leading by a slight bit in terms of speed. From the first move till the 28th move, Xiao resolved it first, then followed by Universe God Qing. So, Xiao had been slightly faster than Universe God Qing all this while. But on the 6th year, Xiao was still stuck on the 29th move, while Universe God Qing resolved the 29th move. Look, Universe God Qing 2090 black chess piece disappeared. He resolved the 29th move. Damn it! He resolved the 29th move, but Xiao is still stuck. The inner disciples from Dayu Palace began to panic. Xiao saw the sight, and his face grew grave. How could it be? I have been faster than him slightly all this while. How could he resolve the 29th move when I'm still stuck? Damn it! How do I resolve the 29th move? Xiao clenched his teeth and continued to try to resolve the move. As he was resolving the move, everyone could see through the impatience in Xiao. He's panicking. The master of Dayu Palace, who was seated on his throne, shook his head. The moment he panics, we will lose any suspense for the match. There was really no suspense anymore. After all, the little scattered stars game was so profound and exquisite. One was required to be calm, and it'd be best if there wasn't any external interference. But then, seeing Universe God Qing leading before him, Xiao became impatient. The more impatient he was, the more chaotic the situation was. It naturally made it even more difficult to resolve the move. Chapter 1295, Result. Chapter 1295, Result. This little guy, sigh. The master of Dayu Palace shook his head in silence, feeling utterly disappointed. Wu Tsong sat next to him and remained composed. The time continued to fly past. Just as the master of Dayu Palace said, there was no suspense in the match. Xiao was stuck at the 29th move for 3 years, and he finally resolved it. However, Universe God Qing was already resolving the 31st move. On the 10th year, which was the last year, Universe God Qing resolved the 32nd move, while Xiao only resolved the 29th move. 10 years had finally passed. "Stop," the master of Dayu Palace said lightly. His voice was calm, yet it spread magically. In that instant, no matter if it were the two of them on the vacant lot or Jian Wushuang and the rest of the inner disciple from Dayu Palace in their respective secret rooms, everyone heard the voice simultaneously. At the same time, it broke off their connections with the little scattered stars game. Everyone stopped. On the vacant lot, Universe God Qing let out a sigh of relief and stood up slowly. As he stood up, the surrounding inner disciples from Dayu Palace looked embarrassed, especially Xiao, who was right beside him. Xiao held his fists tight. His face was pale with rage. He knew that he had lost badly in the match. Universe God Qing resolved a total of 32 moves in 10 years' time, while he only resolved 29 moves. There was a gap of 3 moves. The gap was too wide. Considering the comprehension level, although Xiao was slightly weaker than Universe God Qing, he shouldn't be so ridiculously behind. It was a pity that he was anxious. The master of Dayu Palace sighed and looked at Wu Tsang, who was next to him. "Wu Tsang, you take a crucial role in the Snow Dojo, and you have seen countless geniuses. What do you think about Universe God Qing?" The master of Dayu Palace only asked Wu Tsang what he thought of Universe God Qing, but he didn't bring up Xiao. Obviously, he knew that Wu Tsang wouldn't put Xiao in his eyes. Universe God Qing? Wu Tsang's eyes were cold as he stole a glance at Universe God Qing, who was the focus. He immediately replied, "S.O. S.O." The master of Dayu Palace was shocked. Universe God Qing was widely recognized as the #1 genius in Dayu World. Dayu World had not had a genius for a long time, but Wu Tsang thought he was just SOSO. From the little scattered stars game, one can see, Wu Tsang explained in a deep voice, "You and I know that there are 4 thresholds in the little scattered stars game. Every 33 moves is a threshold. As a universe god in the first heaven, to be able to resolve 33 move in 10 years' time and pass through the first threshold, then one could be considered as a real top genius. Such geniuses are popular in the Snow Dojo. But Universe God Qing only resolved 32 moves in 10 years' time, and he only resolved the 32nd move on the last year. His comprehension level couldn't be considered genius. Of course, in the ordinary world, he is considered an impressive person. But in Snow Dojo, such genius wouldn't even be in the top 50. Is that so? That's a pity. The master of Dayu Palace let out a sigh, but he understood. Dayu World was merely a normal world, which was really small. Snow Dojo was where the geniuses of Snow Kingdom gathered. Those who gathered there were the smartest, and the most wicked universe god Qing was considered the top genius in Dayu World, but he was just SOSO in Snow Dojo. Dayu, actually, there really is a super genius in Dayu World. Wu Tsang suddenly said. Huh. The master of Dayu Palace looked at Wu Tsang in surprise. It's Jian Wushuang. Wu Tsang looked extremely solemn. Jian Wushuang, that boy is very impressive. He could kill a universe god in the first heaven when he was only a universe master. However, that only shows that his fighting power is strong. It couldn't prove his talent and potential, right? The master of Dayu Palace asked as he creased his eyebrows. There's no proof when one based solely on fighting power. The little scattered stars game aimed at testing one's comprehension level. Hence, the little scattered stars game should show his talent, right? Wu Tsang sounded very serious. Dayu, you have been focusing on Chu Xiao from Dayu Palace and Universe Qingyang so much that you didn't pay any attention to Jian Wushuang. I am different from you. During the 10 years, I have been observing Jian Wushuang in secret. I saw his every move in the secret room clearly. Oh, the master of Dayu Palace lifted his eyebrows. He never thought Wu Tsang would pay such attention to Jian Wushuang. Guess, after the 10 years, which move did Jian Wushuang stop at in the Little Scattered Stars game? Wu Tsang looked at the master of Dayu Palace and asked, "Still want to keep it a secret?" The master of Dayu Palace smiled and answered, "The Little Scattered Stars game was influenced by the environment. Under normal circumstances, a universe god in the first heaven could only be considered as a top genius if he resolves 33 moves in 10 years. As for Universe Master, he has to at least resolve 20 moves to be considered as a top genius." Did Jian Wushuang resolve 20 moves? 20 moves? No, more than that. Wu Tsang shook his head. More than 20 moves. The master of Dayu Palace looked surprised. Resolving 20 moves was enough to be considered as a top genius, and it was rare even in Snow Dojo for a genius to have resolved more than 20 moves. Wu Tsang, quick, tell me, how many moves did he resolve? The master of Dayu Palace asked curiously. Wu Tsang didn't continue to keep it a secret, but took a deep breath before he announced, Jian Wushuang wasn't fast in resolving the moves at the beginning. But none of the moves in the later game seemed to hinder him much. It was smooth sailing for him. In 10 years, the Little Scattered Stars game with 100 moves, he resolved a total of 35 moves at the end. What? The master of Dayu Palace's eyes were wide opened in shock. How is that possible? The master of Dayu Palace roared. The roar shocked all the experts from Dayu Palace that had gathered on the vacant lot before Fairy Palace, and they looked over in surprise. They didn't know what it was that had shocked their supreme master of Dayu Palace to the point that he forgot himself. Universe God Qingyang lifted his head and stole a glance at the master of Dayu Palace. The result just came out after the 10 years ended. The master of Dayu Palace should be discussing the result with Lord Wu Tsang, who was next to him. Would it be that I surprised the master of Dayu Palace when I resolved 32 moves within 10 years? That shouldn't be. He saw when I resolved the 32nd move. He didn't respond much then. Universe God Qingyang creased his eyebrows, and his face grew strange. Chapter 1296, Chu Xiao versus Qingyang. Chapter 1296, Chu Xiao versus Qingyang. The master of Dayu Palace realized that he had forgotten himself earlier. He immediately reined his expression in and lowered his voice as he continued to ask, Jian Wushuang really resolved the 35th move? Are you sure? I have been looking at the secret room that he was in. How could I possibly make a mistake? Wu Tsang smiled. The master of Dayu Palace couldn't help but took a breath when he received confirmation from Wu Tsang. While Wu Tsang continued, even a universe god in the first heaven who could resolve 33 moves would be considered as a top genius. Every extra move meant it was more impressive. If a universe god in the first heaven were to resolve 35 moves, he would be like a top genius among geniuses. The most unbelievable thing is that Jian Wushuang is merely a universe master. A universe master can resolve 35 moves in 10 years. I wonder how high his comprehension level is and how great his potential is. In short, Jian Wushuang is much stronger than even universe god Qingyang. The master of Dayu Palace's eyes were glistening with joy. He also knew what it meant for a universe master to resolve 35 moves in 10 years. Look, he's coming here. Wu Tsang beckoned to the master of Dayu Palace. That very moment, everyone who resolved the little scattered stars game in their respective secret room exited one after another. They returned to the vacant lot and gathered there. Jian Wushuang naturally went there as well. However, everyone's focus was on universe god Qing, so no one noticed him. Jian Wushuang didn't mind. After he came to the vacant lot, he stood by the border. He didn't move or speak. Besides the master of Dayu Palace and Wu Tsang, no one else knew how many moves in the little scattered stars game he had resolved in the secret room. Then, Xiao, who was in the middle of the vacant lot, finally stood up. He held his fist tight as he looked at universe god Qing with rage burning in his eyes. Universe god Qing. Xiao spoke with a deep voice. I lost in the chess game. I admit defeat. Next, it's a real test of our power. On this vacant lot, before the palace master and all experts from Dayu Palace, do you dare to fight another match against me? Xiao asked, and the surroundings became noisy. Xiao is asking universe god Qing for a face-to-face match. This match would be different from the chess game earlier. Yeah, to resolve the chess game, one relies on their comprehension level. Universe god Qing has a high level of comprehension, but it doesn't mean that he is stronger than Xiao. Humph. In terms of strength, Xiao is top 1 in Dayu Palace. I have never seen anyone stronger than him among universe gods in the first heaven. Those inner disciples from Dayu Palace started talking among themselves. Most of them were confident in Xiao. Universe god Qing smiled when he heard Xiao. He said, let's fight as you wish. If I don't defeat you face to face, I'm afraid you'll find it difficult to concede defeat. It was a simple invitation, and universe god Qing accepted the challenge. Suddenly, those surrounding inner disciples from Dayu Palace moved backwards simultaneously to make sufficient space for universe god Qing and Xiao to fight. As for those higher-up experts in Dayu Palace, they didn't stop them either. They obviously accepted the match between the two of them. To higher-up experts in Dayu Palace, for example, the master of Dayu Palace, the matches between the younger generation were nothing to be concerned about. Sometimes he would even trigger such battles on purpose. After all, if there wasn't any competition among the disciples, their growth would be limited. Then, the match between universe god Qing and Xiao to the higher-ups in Dayu Palace. It'd be great if Xiao won. But even if he lost, it would be considered as a training for Xiao. There would be no harm done. In the middle of the vacant lot, universe god Qing and Xiao were facing each other. There was a purple spear that appeared in Xiao's hand, while universe god Qing had a black sickle. The two of them were giving out an extremely fierce aura. Kill! Xiao roared, and he took the first move and attacked first. Universe god Qing greeted the attack. Bang! There was a loud noise that was heard across the void. They started fighting, and the extreme divine power of the first heaven was released without restraint. The terrifying divine power strangled the entire space. The sky and earth was shaken. After their first collision, Xiao's figure suddenly became ethereal. Competing in speed, universe god Qing smirked as his figure became ghostly too. Wah, 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 wah. The two figures swept past quickly in the void. The speed was so high that it was hard for the ordinary inner disciples to even catch a glimpse of their bodies. They could only see the little afterimages in the void. Fast, the two of them were extremely fast. Too fast. Many inner disciples in Dayu Palace were surprised. They were dazzled by the sight. After a while, they were done competing in speed. Then, they started fighting ferociously. In the end, The most powerful unique skills collided. Bang! Bang! A loud noise was heard across the sky. Then, the match between universe god Qing and Xiao that had been taking place for half an hour finally ended. Universe god Qing. Xiao looked ferocious as he stared at universe god Qing and bellowed, "You are really terrifyingly strong. You are the strongest among all universe gods in the first heaven that I have come across. Next, I will put my strongest move to play. If you can defend yourself against this, Xiao, will admit my defeat." The strongest move. Universe god Qing smirked. "Go ahead." Xiao quickly blew. "Devil stars and moon." Xiao bellowed and threw out his purple spear that had accumulated boundless divine power. That shot, roar, his rage soared, and there was suddenly a devil created from pure divine power. The devil was huge, and it ran towards universe god Qing as it roared in anger. A terrifying hostility and pressure spread from the devil. There it is, devil of the stars and moon. Xiao's strongest sword move. It's been a while since I last saw Xiao use this. Even if he were to fight with the few universe gods in the first heaven in the palace, he didn't need to use this to take victory. Xiao even used this move. I don't think universe god Qing will be able to endure this. The inner disciples of Dayu Palace held their breath as they watched. However, looking at the devil of the stars and moon charging towards himself, universe god Qing smirked and waved his hand. Chapter 1297, Daydreaming. Chapter 1297, Daydreaming. Buzz. A crimson reflection of the blade was like a scarlet moon that hung upside down. The crimson reflection of the blade didn't display overwhelming power, but the moment it clashed with the devil stars and moon, poof, the blade cut through the body of the devil stars and moon's body brutally. The devil stars and moon was cut into half, and there was an enormous amount of divine power that spurted around. What? Xiao was still shocked, but the crimson reflection was slamming down at him. Bang! Xiao's power of protection was strong. After the crimson reflection crushed the devil stars and moon, it already wore down most of its strength. Hence, the rest of the power wasn't sufficient to bring him damage. Although Xiao wasn't injured, he was still standing there. The surrounding inner disciples of Dayu Palace became silent. He lost. Everyone could tell that Xiao lost. He put his strongest unique skill to play, but in the end, universe god Qing broke it easily. That's all he could do. Universe god Qing stood high in the void as he overlooked Xiao. He looked extremely cold. Xiao, now do you admit defeat? Xiao bit his lip, and his body was shivering, but he couldn't say anything. All these years, every time he hears someone says that the strongest universe god in the first heaven was universe god Qing, he was unhappy. He thought he wouldn't be weaker than universe god Qing, but even stronger. He had been dying to fight a face-to-face battle with universe god Qing to be able to defeat him fair and square. Then he finally came to blow with universe god Qing, but he never expected his opponent to be so strong, and he lost in the end. He was heavily defeated. He could tell that universe god Qing had never put his real ability to play. He definitely didn't fight with his all. Xiao, the top one in Dayu Palace. I always thought that you are the only universe god in the first heaven in Dayu world who could force me to fight with my all. However, from what it seems, it isn't so. Universe god Qing shook his head and mumbled, "Soon I will undergo the god's test in the second heaven. At first, I wanted to find a suitable opponent for me to fight with my all once before I undergo the test. It's a pity. Although Dayu world is big, There isn't any universe god in the first heaven that could make me fight with my all. Although universe god Qing didn't speak louder, the surrounding people could hear him. Those inner disciples in Dayu Palace, including expert universe gods, in the second heaven creased their eyebrows. That boy, it quite crazy, the master of Dayu Palace laughed. He isn't crazy, but he can't find any opponent. Wu Song said coldly. Can't find any opponent? There's Jian Wushuang, isn't it? The master of Dayu Palace smiled, and his gaze was fixed to the corner of the vacant lot. Not only himself and Wu Song next to him. Inner disciples and experts from Dayu Palace on the scene looked towards the same direction. That direction was where Jian Wushuang was at. Jian Wushuang was the one and only person that experts in Dayu world acknowledged who could be compared favorably with or even surpassed universe god Qing. However, when everyone looked at Jian Wushuang and saw his expression, everyone found it strange. Under everyone's gaze, Jian Wushuang stood there without moving an inch. His gaze looked dull, and the corner of his lips lifted a weird smile. He was obviously daydreaming. What is he doing? We are having a fierce battle here. Chu Xiao and universe god Qing Yang's battle was extremely interesting, but Jian Wushuang was daydreaming? Did he turn stupid? Why would he be daydreaming at times like this? What is he doing? Everyone was shocked. No one expected that Jian Wushuang would be daydreaming when Chu Xiao and universe god Qing Yang were in a ferocious fight. Even after the fight, and when everyone looked towards him, Jian Wushuang had yet to come back to reality. This boy, the master of Dayu Palace, and Wu Song didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. It seemed that within the 10 years of resolving the Little Scattered Stars game, he came to a realization. After he exited the secret room, he couldn't wait but drown in his own thought. Wu Song said, "But even if he wanted to digest the realization, doesn't he know to look at the occasion?" This boy, the master of Dayu Palace, shook his head. Jian Wushuang. The inner disciple of Dayu Palace who stood next to Jian Wushuang quickly gave him a push as he wasn't responding. Jian Wushuang then came back to reality and lifted his head subconsciously. He saw that everyone's gaze was fixed on him. Jian Wushuang felt embarrassed as everyone was staring at him. He scratched the back of his head and asked, "Everyone, why are you looking at me?" The inner disciples of Dayu Palace were left speechless. Jian Wushuang, the master of Dayu Palace, spoke. "Palace master," Jian Wushuang answered politely. "The earlier fight between Chu Xiao and Qing Yang was vigorous, but you were daydreaming by the side." The master of Dayu Palace spoke in a reprimanding tone. "Jian Wushuang, you are really unconcerned, and just let the matter rest." Chu Xiao and universe god Qing Yang fought. Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded, and he asked subconsciously, "Who won?" Within the 10 years when he resolved the Little Scattered Stars game, he gained a lot. But because he gained a lot, he couldn't wait to start digesting his harvest right after he exited the secret room. He never once paid attention at anything that happened outside. Even the fight between Chu Xiao and universe god Qing Yang, he never even take a glance. Until then, only he realized that the outcome of the battle was out. Jian Wushuang. Chu Xiao looked at Jian Wushuang indeterminably and said, "Universe god Qing Yang is extremely strong. I am not his match. Among those who are cultivating below the ranking of universe god in the second heaven, you might be the only who is qualified to fight against him." Me, Jian Wushuang, was astounded. Then he shook his head and replied, "Chu Xiao, even you who are the top one in Dayu Palace can't win against him, let alone I who am only a universe master. How could I be his match?" Chu Xiao heard and creased his eyebrows, but he didn't say anything else. The inner disciples of Dayu Palace shook their head too. That was true. Xu Xiao wasn't even his match. Even if Jian Wushuang reveals his amazing fighting skill, he was merely a universe master after all. It was obviously illogical for a universe master to fight against universe god Qing Yang. Jian Wushuang. Universe god Qing Yang laughed lightly and looked towards Jian Wushuang. Supposedly, you are only a universe master, and I disdain to do anything with you. However, on my way here, my master told me that I have to kill you if I have a chance to. Universe god Qing Yang brought it up so lightly, but everyone around him heard and stunned. Jian Wushuang's gaze turned cold, and he looked at Universe god Qing Yang when he asked, Universe god Qing Yang, what are you trying to do? Chapter 1298. Agreed. Chapter 1298. Agreed. For what? Bringing everyone to attention, Universe god Qing Yang smirked creepily, and his bright voice was slowly heard across the place. It's a master's order. How could I go against it? Plus, you killed Jiushi. Although I wasn't that close to Jiushi, she was my junior disciple. How could I not take revenge on behalf of my junior disciple? Jian Wushuang, come and fight me. Jian Wushuang replied calmly. What if I don't? This is Dayu Palace. How dare you act indiscreetly? The master of Dayu Palace on the throne lifted his eyebrows and said, Jian Wushuang is a guest in Dayu Palace. If he were to agree to fight a battle with you, you can exchange blows. But if he doesn't, you can't lay a finger on him. Universe god Qing Yang understood, and he wasn't surprised at all. He smiled faintly when he replied, I, of course, wouldn't act recklessly in Dayu Palace. However, now that Scarlet Island and Golden Sun Sect are in a fighting frenzy, if Holy Prefecture were to get involved, maybe even if we couldn't destroy Scarlet Island entirely, we could cause them severe damage, right? Threatening me? Jian Wushuang looked at him coldly. Universe god Qing Yang smiled faintly, but didn't reply. Jian Wushuang kept quiet for a while, and then he lifted his head and replied, As you want to fight with me so badly, I shall grant your wish. I agree to fight with you, but this fight will have to wait. Wait. Universe god Qing Yang creased his eyebrows. During the time when we were resolving the chess game, I learned quite a bit. The most important thing now is taking time to digest everything. I believe it's the same for you too. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and continued, Don't worry, it won't be long. Just 1 year. I shall fight with you after 1 year. What do you think? Just 1 year. Universe god Qing Yang revealed a cold smile. All right then, I shall wait for you for a year in Dayu Palace. Then, Universe god Qing Yang didn't bother with acknowledging anyone around him, but bowed politely to the master of Dayu Palace and Wu Tsang, who was seated on the uppermost before he left. Jian Wushuang left directly. After Jian Wushuang and Universe god Qing Yang left, the vacant lot before Fairy Palace suddenly became noisy. He agreed. Jian Wushuang agreed to fight with Universe god Qing Yang. Universe god Qing Yang said it clearly that he is going to kill Jian Wushuang in the fight. Jian Wushuang still agreed to fight with him. Although it is embarrassing to reject the other's challenge, he is a universe master after all, while Universe god Qing Yang is the top among universe gods in the first heaven. The gap between their ability is vast. Even if Jian Wushuang rejected him, no one would think badly of him. However, he accepted the challenge. It is unwise, isn't it? The inner disciples of Dayu Palace started discussing among themselves. Almost everyone thought Jian Wushuang was too impulsive. From what they saw, if Jian Wushuang were to undergo God's test and become universe god in the first heaven, he could totally fight against universe god Qing Yang. However, he was just a universe master. With such vastly different abilities, how could he accept the other person's challenge just because of a few brief, threatening speeches? On the thrones, the master of Dayu Palace and Wu Tsang were chatting softly. Do you think the boy is impulsive, or is he confident with his ability? The master of Dayu Palace said, I personally think that it's the latter. Wu Tsang replied, Jian Wushuang is talented. Universe God Qing is far from his standard. As for disposition, his would only be higher, not lower compared to Universe God Qing. That could be seen through his reaction of remaining silent after he resolved the 35 moves in the Little Scattered Stars game. He is very low profile. He knew how to hide his light under a bushel. For a person of such disposition, how could he be so impulsive? Plus, he pushed the fight to 1 year later. Do not belittle a year's time. He gained a lot from the Little Scattered Stars game. Once he digests it properly, his ability could reach another higher level in this 1 year. Obviously, he knew that. Hence, he agreed to fight with Universe God Qing 1 year later. If so, the one who will be in trouble after a year would be Universe God Qing. The master of Dayu Palace smiled. Not necessarily. After all, Universe God Qing is quite strong. He didn't even give his all when he defeated Xiao from Dayu Palace. In a year's time, whether Jian Wushuang could improve himself to the level where he could be compared favorably with Universe God Qing or even overtake him is hard to say. Wu Tsang shook his head. Haha, that's interesting. 1 year later, I'd like to see who is the one that will be smiling till the end. The master of Dayu Palace smiled faintly, looking forward to the fight. Jian Wushuang agreed to fight a final battle with Universe God Qing in a year's time. The news spread like wildfire. The higher-ups in Scarlet Island naturally heard about the news very soon. The master of Scarlet Island immediately rushed to Dayu Palace personally. On the second day, the master of Scarlet Island saw Jian Wushuang. Island master, Jian Wushuang bowed politely. I've heard about it. The master of Scarlet Island looked solemnly at Jian Wushuang and said in a deep voice, Jian Wushuang, you shouldn't have agreed to fight a final battle with Universe God Qing. Jian Wushuang kept quiet. He knew that the master of Scarlet Island would say this. I know Universe God Qing threatened you with Scarlet Island. That's why you agreed to fight with him. Actually, his threat is nothing. Scarlet Island has existed in Dayu World for many years. If we were to be so easily bullied, we would have been gone long ago. As for what he said about joining forces between Holy Prefecture and Golden Sun Sect, set aside the fact that both of them have fought countless times and harbor a deep-seated hatred for one another, it is almost impossible that they are going to join forces. Even if they join forces, Scarlet Island isn't afraid at all. At most, they would only take petty prizes from Scarlet Island, but they wouldn't dare to really drive Scarlet Island into a corner. Once they force us into a corner, Scarlet Island could ignore Golden Sun Sect and fight to the death with Holy Prefecture, or die together with Holy Prefecture. Or we could ignore Holy Prefecture and die together with Golden Sun Sect. Neither parties are stupid. They wouldn't dare to follow this course. Hence, whatever that Universe God Qing said was just empty talk. He only wanted you to agree with the fight. Then he will kill you in a vigorous fight. The master of Scarlet Island was serious. Jian Wushuang smiled in surprise as he listened. Island Master, I knew long ago that Universe God Qing threat was nothing. You knew long ago? The master of Scarlet Island creased his eyebrows. If you knew long ago, why did you? That's because I really want to fight with Universe God Qing. Jian Wushuang's eyes were beaming with excitement. Chapter 1299, Seclusion. Chapter 1299, Seclusion. You want to fight against Universe God Qing? The master of Scarlet Island was surprised. Jian Wushuang smiled and replied, Universe God Qing was at the top amongst the universe gods in the first heaven in Daiyu world. I wish to fight against such a figure. And he said that he would undergo the God test in the second heaven soon. Once he undergoes the God's test, he will be leaving Daiyu world to wander around. By then, I won't have a way to get another chance to fight with him. Now, the one and only chance is before my eyes. How could I let it go? Universe God Qing obviously wanted to kill you. You will still be a universe master 1 year later. Are you confident you can fight against him then? The master of Scarlet Island had his eyebrows tightly knitted together. Not now, but I might be after a year, Jian Wushuang replied. Might be. The master of Scarlet Island couldn't accept his answer. Island master, as I am brave enough to agree to fight with Universe God Qing, I naturally am confident. The fight in a year's time, even if I can't win against him, it won't be a problem for me to stay alive. Don't you worry, Jian Wushuang smiled. As long as you can stay alive, the master of Scarlet Island nodded, but didn't ask any further questions. After sending the master of Scarlet Island off, Jian Wushuang started cultivating in seclusion. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang sat alone. I am just a universe master. Although I have the achievement of killing a universe god in the first heaven, my fighting power is merely very similar to a universe god in the first heaven. I'm afraid no one would believe that I am going to defeat universe god Qing in our fight 1 year later. Jian Wushuang mumbled to himself, but the corner of his lips lifted into a smile. When he accepted the challenge, he knew that there must be a lot of people who thought he had made an impulsive decision and that it was unwise. However, who would know him better than himself? A year's time looked short. However, to Jian Wushuang, it was sufficient for him to digest most of his gains from his 10 years of resolving the Little Scattered Stars game. He resolved a total of 35 moves in the Little Scattered Stars game within 10 years. The Little Scattered Stars game. Every move resolved meant that the nature of swordsmanship was accumulated to a new level, especially from the 33rd move onwards. He resolved till the 35th move, and his understanding towards swordsmanship reached a whole new level. His current level was much higher compared to before. Even if he only digested half of the accumulated nature of swordsmanship, it would still lead to tremendous improvement in his power. Although he wasn't certain if he could defeat Universe God Qing after a year, he was sure that he could survive Universe God Qing match in a year. As for the fact that Universe God Qing wanted to kill him, he had an embodiment of blood-killing plate armor. His divine body was extremely strong, and he had his last card, Secret Skills of Star Palace. Hence, it was plainly nothing more than an extravagant hope of Universe God Qing. Because he knew all this, he wasn't willing to let the chance slip. That's why he agreed to fight against Universe God Qing. The accumulated nature of swordsmanship from resolving 35 moves. 1 year's time. Let's begin. Jian Wushuang held both his fists tight and shut his eyes in the next second. When Jian Wushuang was in seclusion, the universe god Zhouhai of Holy Prefecture came to Daiyu Palace too. In the courtyard, the universe god Zhouhai was seated opposite universe god Qing. Jian Wushuang has been in Daiyu Palace, but I have never found a chance to kill him. It's great now that I don't have to look for a chance, but you could take action more straightforwardly. In the upcoming fight, just killing him will do. The universe god Zhouhai laughed happily. At first, I did not carry much hope, but I never thought he would accept the challenge so easily. I wonder if he was really confident or if he was just too silly. Universe god Qing sneered, but his gaze was cold. Within a year's time, even if he improved tremendously, how much could he really improve? Would he be able to reach Chu Zhao's level? Humph, he must be dreaming. The universe god Zhou Hai spat. He is only a universe master. It is already unbelievable that his fighting power is at the current level, and he wants to level it up more? Unless he could pass the god's test and become a universe god in the first heaven. Otherwise, he doesn't stand a chance. Universe god Qing Yang smiled. To universe god Qing Yang, the only one left who qualified to bother him in Daiyu world was Jian Wushuang. However, the reason why Jian Wushuang bothered him was that Jian Wushuang might be qualified for a fight with him if he were to undergo God's test and become a universe god in the first heaven. As it was, he wasn't concerned about Jian Wushuang. He wasn't even concerned about the fight that was going to happen in a year's time. From what he saw, the fight was destined to be Jian Wushuang's grave. Master, do you know that Lord Wutsang has been staying in Daiyu Palace? Universe god Qin Yang suddenly said. Lord Wutsang. The universe god Zhou Hai was astonished. He obviously knew who Lord Wutsang was. Lord Wutsang carries an important role in Snow Dojo. He seems to have authority too. Previously, regardless of if it was the chess game or the fight between Chu Xiao and Lord Wutsang saw. One of the biggest reasons why I reveal my abilities in Daiyu Palace was because of Lord Wutsang. Universe god Qin Yang said, You are trying to catch Lord Wutsang's attention and ask him for a recommendation? The universe god Zhou Hai squinted his eyes. Yes, universe god Qin Yang nodded in agreement. Snow Dojo, the genius concentration camp in Snow Kingdom, also a place I have been yearning for. It's a pity that it is too difficult to get into Snow Dojo without recommendation. This is a great opportunity for me. If Lord Wutsang were to have his eyes on me, he could recommend me. Maybe I would be able to get into the Snow Dojo. By then, my talent could be fully into play. Lord Wutsang, has he ever looked for you? The universe god Zhou Hai asked. Universe god Qin Yang shook his head. He should have noticed me before Fairy Palace, but he didn't say anything then. Maybe I didn't show my power enough, and I have yet to impress him. I didn't give my all when I was fighting with Chu Xiao after all. Hence, regardless of Jian Wushuang's ability, I will give out my strongest ability when I am fighting with Jian Wushuang 1 year later. I will kill him smooth, and cleanly, and let Lord Wutsang get a good look at my abilities. Then, universe god Qin Yang couldn't help but hold his fists tight. His eyes were twinkling with an unprecedented shine too. Snow Dojo, I have to get in there. It's where I really belong. No one can stop me. Chapter 1300, Integration of Swordsmanship, Tremendous Improvement in Power. Chapter 1300, Integration of Swordsmanship, Tremendous Improvement in Power. In the wait of 1 year's time, half had passed by in the blink of an eye. In the spacious secret room, Jian Wushuang, who was originally seated, stood up. However, he never opened his eyes. Blood Mountain Sword appeared in Jian Wushuang's hand, and he started wielding the sword in the secret room. The flashes of sword light swung out from his hand. The flashes of sword light became faster and faster, while the power became stronger and stronger. Swoosh! There were sharp whistles as the tip of the blade cut through the air. The continuous noise got sharper too. He had been swinging the sword for 3 days straight. 3 days later, Jian Wushuang stopped his action, and the entire secret room became silent. It was so quiet that even space and time froze. Right at that moment, Jian Wushuang, who had kept his eyes shut the whole time, suddenly opened his eyes. The glow in his eyes beamed as though they were spurting out from his sockets. Jian Wushuang was holding the Blood Mountain sword, and he started swinging his sword again. Virum! A clear and melodious sword whistle was heard, and there was a swift and violent stab. In that instance, there was a lustrous brilliance that looked extremely beautiful. The moment it appeared, the universe lost its color in comparison. Too beautiful. That brilliance was too beautiful. It was just like a beautiful rainbow, a trace that drew across the void and didn't go away for a long time. So enchanting. Everything in the universe was enchanted. In the void before the brilliance, everything was twisted. After the swordsmanship was put fully into play, Jian Wushuang slowly retrieved his Blood Mountain sword. However, the beautiful brilliance was still there and became part of eternity. Looking at the beautiful brilliance, Jian Wushuang revealed a surprised smile. 10 years of accumulation from the Little Scattered Stars game, half a year of digestion. I finally created a brand new unique skill in swordsmanship. This move, the brilliance won't go away for so long, almost as though it is eternal. Its name will be Eternal Light. Jian Wushuang was inspired to create a brand new unique skill, Eternal Light. It was derived from the accumulation of resolving Little Scattered Stars game for 10 years. Jian Wushuang wasn't sure which level was the unique skill at, but he knew that the power was much stronger than Nirvana and the Chant of Disturbance that he had created back then. Even though the two unique skills were already peak, rank 1 unique skills. Jian Wushuang, try to integrate your swordsmanship into your Blood Mountain sword. King of Venomous Worms' voice was suddenly heard. Integrated into Blood Mountain sword. Jian Wushuang was beaming with joy. His Blood Mountain sword was a precious embryo sword, the highest grade of embryo sword. Embryo sword could integrate with a unique skill to enhance its power, and the highest grade of embryo sword had an extremely high threshold. Jian Wushuang spread quite a few unique skills before. He had even created peak rank 1 unique skills like Nirvana and Chant of Disturbance. However, the two unique skills couldn't be integrated into Blood Mountain sword until Jian Wushuang created Eternal Light. Let's give it a try. I hope it will succeed. Jian Wushuang started trying with excitement. He tried and was quickly rewarded with a result. I succeeded. There was thrill twinkling in Jian Wushuang's eyes. He could feel that there was a unique skill in Blood Mountain sword. The unique skill was Eternal Light, which he had created, and the existence of the unique skill was bizarre. It was just like an inborn secret skill power of Blood Mountain sword. It was just like blood-killing plate armor. Blood-killing plate armor carried 3 layers of power. Now, Jian Wushuang could trigger the second layer of power. In other words, his power increased tremendously. Jian Wushuang, try to swing your sword, King of Venomous Worms said. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate, swinging sword casually in the secret room. He didn't put his swordsmanship to play, and he used a normal strength, but with just one swung, the terrifying power erupted directly. Jian Wushuang obviously felt that the power of the swing was not any weaker compared to a peak universe god in the first heaven. There was terror that flashed in Jian Wushuang's eyes, but he swung his sword again the very next moment. Then he erupted his power entirely along with the second layer of power in blood-killing plate armor. Wow! Jian Wushuang performed the Dawn-like technique, which was the most ordinary rank 1 unique skill. However, the stroke tore the void before him easily, and the erupted power was very strong. Even those peak universe gods in the first heaven would have been terrified if they could have seen it. How was it? Jian Wushuang was astonished. This is too impressive. After integrating Eternal Light into the Blood Mountain sword, the power that the Blood Mountain sword displayed was extremely powerful. His personal strength, along with the second layer of power in blood-killing plate armor, could, theoretically, reach the power level of advanced universe god in the first heaven, but far from peak universe god in the first heaven. However, he was still full of energy. His power could be compared favorably with peak universe god in the first heaven, or even be considered slightly superior. The difference in power between an advanced universe god in the first heaven and a peak universe god in the first heaven was extremely vast. However, it was made up for entirely by Blood Mountain Sword. In other words, Jian Wushuang could be even-handed with a peak universe god in the first heaven merely with the eruption of his power. He might even be stronger by one notch. This is so unbelievable. Jian Wushuang mumbled. Unbelievable. What's so unbelievable? King of Venomous Worms thought otherwise. Jian Wushuang, you are too inexperienced. You have no idea how valuable the Blood Mountain Sword is. It is the highest grade of embryo sword, which is sufficient for countless experts to fight with. Once the highest grade of embryo sword is integrated with a unique skill, the power would be displayed constantly. When you were just performing swordsmanship, you already triggered the power of eternal light in the Blood Mountain Sword. In other words, a simple swing of Blood Mountain Sword equals the power of eternal light when you performed it with all your strength. If you were to put your unique skill into play, it would be like stacking two unique skills together. How scary is that? Stacking two unique skills together? Jian Wushuang was stunned and suddenly understood. He felt delighted. Compared to a peak universe god in the first heaven, my only downfall was that the erupted power is too weak. Even if I trigger the second layer of power in blood-killing plate armor, I could only be compared favorably with an advanced universe god in the first heaven. But now it's a different story. It's really different. After eternal light integrated into Blood Mountain Sword, his power could reach the level of peak universe god in the first heaven if he were to fully erupt his power with the aid of the Blood Mountain Sword. He could be evenly matched with a peak universe god in the first heaven, or even slightly stronger. His overall power had increased tremendously. Chapter 1301, The Final Battle Day. Chapter 1301, The Final Battle Day. With the tremendous improvement of his overall power, Jian Wushuang naturally felt more confident. After all, his power was now comparable with a peak universe god in the first heaven, and he was confident that his unique skill and swordsmanship would not be any weaker than universe god Qing. In other words, his current self could fight face-to-face with universe god Qing, and the battle would be very close. No hurry. There's still half a year time. In this half a year, I will continue to digest the accumulation like before, and I can continue to improve my swordsmanship. Jian Wushuang smiled and took a seat. He started digesting his previous accumulation. The time flew and another half a year passed. The final battle that Jian Wushuang and universe god Qing had agreed on finally arrived. In Dayu Palace, there was a training field right in the middle of the sect. The training field covered over 1,000,000 miles. It was enough for two universe gods to fight as ferociously as they wish. The training field was where Jian Wushuang and universe god Qing would fight. At the surrounding of the training field, many inner disciples of Dayu Palace had gathered long ago. Not only them, but many experts from Scarlet Island, Holy Prefecture, and also Golden Sun Sect also rushed over too. A year ago, the news about the final battle between Jian Wushuang and universe god Qing spread across the lands. Regardless if it was Jian Wushuang or universe god Qing, both of them were famous in Dayu world, and both of them were real geniuses. A collision between geniuses naturally caught everyone's attention. In the void right before the training field, two thrones were towering side by side, which belonged to the master of Dayu Palace and Wu Tsang. The two of them were universe gods in the third heaven, hence they were naturally above the others. At that very moment, both of them were looking at the training field below. They could recognize the young figure, who stood right in the middle of the training field. Universe God Qing arrived long ago. Where's Jian Wushuang? It's already this time, and he still hasn't shown up yet? The master of Dayu Palace found it strange. The people surrounding the training field found it strange too. It's already time. Why hasn't Jian Wushuang show up? Is he afraid? Very likely. He only agreed to fight with Universe God Qing out of an impulse decision. When he calmed down, he must have realized how foolish his decision was. That's why he's not showing up. Not showing up is also a good choice. It's better than losing his life in the battle. People started talking among themselves. While on the other side, the experts from Scarlet Island saw that Jian Wushuang had yet to show up, and they were surprised too. Then, the master of Scarlet Island walked towards where Jian Wushuang was living personally. The master of Scarlet Island knew where Jian Wushuang was soon after he arrived at the huge courtyard where Jian Wushuang resided. They are going to fight now, and he's still in the secret room. The master of Scarlet Island shook his head and shouted, "Jian Wushuang!" His voice went through regulations outside the secret room and traveled into Jian Wushuang's ears, who was quietly cultivating in seclusion in the secret room. Jian Wushuang was still sitting in the secret room with his eyes closed. He was still digesting the accumulated nature of swordsmanship with full attention. He suddenly heard the master of Scarlet Island shouting for him, and he couldn't help but crease his eyebrows and finally open his eyes. Oh, it's time. Jian Wushuang let loose his tightly knitted eyebrows and exited the secret room. Island Master. Jian Wushuang smiled and greeted the master of Scarlet Island outside the secret room. Jian Wushuang, today is the day you fight against Universe God Qing. Everyone is waiting for you at the training field, but you are happy here. You're not even anxious, still cultivating leisurely in the secret room, the master of Scarlet Island teased. Ha! Jian Wushuang laughed. I'm just too caught up in cultivation and forgot about the time. Everyone outside was saying that you're not showing up for the battle as you are afraid to fight against the Universe God Qing, the master of Scarlet Island said. Afraid? Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian Wushuang, have never been afraid of a battle ever since I was born. In fact, I am quite excited for it. Jian Wushuang said casually, but his eyes were beaming with excitement. When he was in the Green Fire world, he had already heard about Universe God Qing from Joshi. After he came to Dayu world, Universe God Qing name had long resounded in his ears. The countless cultivators in Dayu world said that he was the top genius in Dayu world, said that he was the #1 among Universe God in the first heaven. Jian Wushuang had heard those claims countless times. Maybe due to his fame, Jian Wushuang was dying to fight a battle against him. 1 year ago, before he achieved such a huge breakthrough in his power, he already accepted the challenge delightedly. Then, when his power increased tremendously, he was even more excited to fight against Universe God Qing. He also wanted to see how strong the #1 Universe God in the first heaven of Dayu world was. Jian Wushuang, when you arrive at the training field, look for the master of Dayu Palace before you fight. Let him return to you your Blaze Quicksand Gourd. He shan't reject your request. With Blaze Quicksand Gourd in your hand, your power could be a notch stronger, and there's a higher chance of winning against Universe God Qing, the master of Scarlet Island said. Blaze Quicksand Gourd. Jian Wushuang shook his head. I don't need Blaze Quicksand Gourd now. Don't need? You're so confident. The master of Scarlet Island creased his eyebrows. Just watch me, Jian Wushuang smiled. As they chatted, they arrived at the training field. The moment he arrived at the training field, countless pairs of eyes looked at him. It's Jian Wushuang. He's finally here. He really dared to come here? I thought he ran away. The inner disciples from Dayu Palace immediately became noisy. Jian Wushuang, the Golden Sun sect master, and a few universe gods from Golden Sun sect gathered together. The Golden Sun sect master stared at Jian Wushuang coldly. Although he couldn't be certain that Jian Wushuang was the person who killed his son, Jin Feng, he was at least 70% sure that Jian Wushuang had something to do with Jin Feng's death. At first, I wanted to find a chance to capture that kid and question him with regards to how Feng died. But from how it looks, I'm afraid I might not have that chance. The Golden Sun sect master side. On the other corner, the few universe god from Holy Prefecture saw Jian Wushuang's arrival, and their gazes turned cold too, especially the universe god Zhouhai. This boy is Jian Wushuang. How dare you kill my disciple? I'll watch how you die today. The universe god Zhouhai's intention to kill was soaring. Universe god Qing, who had been standing calmly in the middle of the training field, sent a cold gaze when he saw Jian Wushuang arrived. You're finally here. Universe god Qing held his fists tight and lifted his head to look at the void before him. He saw that the master of Dayu Palace and Wu Tsang suddenly appeared in the space. Jian Wushuang, you're lucky. Although you're not that strong, you should feel honored to be the stepping stone that allows me to enter the Snow Dojo. In this battle, fully prepare yourself as my stepping stone. Chapter 1302, A Pitched Battle. Chapter 1302, A Pitched Battle. In the middle of the training field, Jian Wushuang and universe god Qing were standing opposite one another. The universe was in silence. The surrounding people held their breath as they watched the battle. The Blood Mountain sword had already appeared in Jian Wushuang's hand, while the black sickle had appeared in universe god Qing hand, the desire to fight soared in both their eyes. I have been looking forward to this battle. Jian Wushuang pointed at his opponent with the tip of his blade. Universe god Qing, I hope you don't disappoint me. I will grant your wish. Universe god Qing lifted the corner of his lips and smiled coldly as he thought to himself, this battle, I must bring all my skills into play, but I can't kill Jian Wushuang straight away, right at the beginning. I have to do it slowly. Then, universe god Qing partially reigned in his divine power on purpose. He then took action before everyone's gaze. From a far-off distance, universe god Qing gripped the black sickle and swung. Buzz! The shadow of the huge blade suddenly unveiled the effect of its divine power. It formed a beautiful, mighty river of surging blades. The blade river was crimson, and it looked extremely beautiful in the void. Such a strong stroke. So exquisite. He just performed such an exquisite stroke, so casually. The surrounding spectators saw the crimson blade river and showed terrified expressions. They could tell that the stroke that universe god Qing did was very exquisite. Looking at the crimson blade river surging towards him, Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows slightly. He intentionally suppressed his divine power and wanted to defeat me with unique skill techniques. Jian Wushuang snorted. Regardless of how luxurious the river blade was, Jian Wushuang found the power ordinary. It was obvious that universe god Qing had the ability to control his divine power. Break! Jian Wushuang spat one word lightly with a calm expression. At the same time, he waved the Blood Mountain sword downwards casually. With a casual stroke, Jian Wushuang didn't even use any swordsmanship, but the sword light swung out and directly cut the beautiful blade river that was approaching him in half. The surging divine power collapsed and dispersed into all four directions. Universe god Qing expression changed. He never expected that Jian Wushuang could resolve that stroke so easily. Universe God Qing Yang. Jian Wushuang spoke with a loud and bright voice. Don't hide, bring your all. Otherwise, it would be meaningless even if I defeat you. In a year, your power increased this tremendously compared to before. Universe God Qing Yang smirked. If so, I shall grant you your wish then. Just as he finished speaking, rumble, there was a vast expanse of aura that surged from Universe God Qing Yang, which was obviously much stronger than before. Then, Universe God Qing Yang took action again. Buzz. The same beautiful surging blade river swept out, but the difference was that the Crimson Blade river contained a significantly stronger divine power. Dragon lightning. Universe God Qing Yang roared and wielded the sickle in his hand. In the Crimson Blade River was an enormous amount of divine power surging fiercely. Suddenly, it took the shape of a humongous blood dragon. The blood dragon had 5 claws, and it was huge in size. After it took shape, it roared, and it flowed towards Jian Wushuang in the form of flowing a crimson current. Jian Wushuang saw. Then he took a huge stride forward and swung the Blood Mountain sword at the void before him. That stroke stabbed right at the throat of the blood dragon that was attacking with such swift action. A terrifying, strangling power burst out, and the blood dragon was suddenly torn into pieces. Universe God Qing Yang watched as the blood dragon collapsed. He couldn't be bothered. His gaze was cold, and tremendous divine power surged. Then he shouted again. Thousand Dragons Lightning. Roar, 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 roar. Countless roars were suddenly heard across the universe. Among the huge Crimson Blade river, boundless divine power formed one blood dragon, one after another. All the blood dragons had 5 claws and were all huge in size. The power didn't seem to be any weaker compared to the blood dragon before. He looked, and there were countless thousands of blood dragon that appeared from the Crimson Blade River. The blood dragons plunged towards Jian Wushuang from all directions with great momentum. Everyone who was watching showed terror in their eyes at the sight. They could tell that every blood dragon from the Blade River equaled a full blow of a peak universe god in the first heaven. There were more than 1,000 of them charging towards Jian Wushuang, and it was like more than 1,000 attacks from a peak universe god in the first heaven. It was reckoned that there weren't many who could endure such a terrifying move among universe gods in the first heaven. Looking at the blood dragons charging from all directions, Jian Wushuang didn't seem anxious at all. He stood there with his hand holding onto his sword as his soul power diffused. He looked at all the attacks hemming him in, and he took action. Wow, 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 wow. There were cold and brutal sword lights that swung out, and Jian Wushuang expelled them rather casually. However, after it was sent out from the Blood Mountain sword, every single stroke was like a full blow of a peak universe god in the first heaven, and even slightly stronger. His swordsmanship was swift, and it easily dismissed the blood dragons. The blood dragons collapsed one after another. The dispersed divine power became an impactful force and spread all around insanely. Boring. Jian Wushuang, who was in the middle of the training field, sighed, and his gaze turned cold. Wow! A sword light with a string of boundless vigor and hope suddenly appeared from nowhere. It was the unique skill that Jian Wushuang created, Nirvana. After cultivating for a year, Jian Wushuang had a brand new foundation of understanding towards swordsmanship. Nirvana was enhanced again, and it could be considered the top peak rank 1 unique skill. The terrifying sword light gave out earth-shattering power. Suddenly, it shattered all the blood dragons before him along the Crimson Blade River that filled the void. He broke a walkway in the Crimson Blade River. That very moment, Jian Wushuang was holding his imposing gaze. Then his body turned illusionary, and he appeared before universe god Qing Yang via the walkway that he broke earlier. Chant of disturbance. Jian Wushuang swung his stroke like a flash of lightning. The blade whistled and reverberated, and it was an extremely shrill noise. The sword light affected the space, and was aimed at universe god Qing Yang when it hit. At the instant that the blade whistled, a terrifying soul attack landed, a heavy hit on universe god Qing Yang. Although universe god Qing Yang was strong, the sudden soul attack made his face change. Under the effect of soul attack, a terrifying swordsmanship was raining down. Chapter 1303, 3 Extra Moves. Chapter 1303, 3 Extra Moves. Clang! There was a loud clash at the crucial moment. Universe god Qing Yang swung the black sickle in his hand and blocked Jian Wushuang's attack. The strong power exploded from the sword and cast universe god Qing Yang off. He was flung off tens of thousands of miles due to the impact, but he barely stopped, and his complexion was obviously pale. Everyone who was watching the battle saw the sight and was surprised. At first, I thought it would be a battle with no suspense. However, when they started fighting, universe god Qing Yang was at a disadvantageous position. Universe god Qing Yang was cast off by Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang has the advantage. Everyone was surprised. They found it unbelievable. After all, there was no one who believed that Jian Wushuang could be universe god Qing Yang's match before the battle. Everyone was merely wondering about how long Jian Wushuang could survive under universe god Qing Yang's attack. However, the scene before their eyes was beyond their expectations. The two of them fought, and Jian Wushuang had the upper hand in the end and cast universe god Qing Yang off. Jian Wushuang, it seems like I belittled you. Universe god Qing Yang could feel the surrounding strange looks, and his face grew grave. A year ago, your power was probably close to a peak universe god in the first heaven. Any peak universe god in the first heaven should be able to win against you. But now, your power has increased to such a level. I'm afraid even Xiao couldn't be your match now, too. Universe god Qing Yang didn't hide his voice, and everyone could hear him clearly. What he said stirred a discussion among the spectators. Amongst the crowd, Xiao from Dayu Palace was standing there too. His eyebrows were tightly knitted, and he mumbled, Jian Wushuang, his power has surpassed me. He found it unbelievable. In a year's time, Jian Wushuang had improved so tremendously. Not just him. Almost everyone at the scene found it hard to believe. In a year's time, your strength increased tremendously. Jian Wushuang, I am really curious. How did you do it? Was it because of the chess game? Universe Qing Yang said, and looked towards Jian Wushuang. How many moves did you resolve in the Little Scattered Stars game? The surrounding spectators, too, looked towards Jian Wushuang, especially those inner disciples of Dayu Palace. Then, only they remembered that Jian Wushuang didn't disclose the number of moves he resolved a year ago. No one else knew how far in the Little Scattered Stars game he had managed to get in the 10 years' duration. Until then, universe god Qing Yang only thought of asking after seeing Jian Wushuang's tremendous improvement in a year. Jian Wushuang didn't intend to answer universe god Qing Yang's inquiry, but the master of Dayu Palace, who was in the void in front of the training field, laughed and cut in, I know how many moves did Jian Wushuang resolved. Just like you, he studied the chess game for 10 years. But in the end, the number of moves that he resolved was 3 higher than your total, Qing Yang. The master of Dayu Palace replied so lightly, but universe god Qing Yang heard it, and it sounded so jarring. 3 more moves than me? Universe God Qing Yang's eyes were wide open. The surrounding inner disciples were surprised too. Universe God Qing Yang resolved 32 moves in 10 years, and he made 3 more moves than Universe God Qing Yang. Doesn't it mean that he resolved 35 moves? As a universe master, he resolved 35 moves in 10 years? Is this a joke? Didn't the palace master said that the chess game was restrained by one's level? Wasn't there too many moves for a universe master to resolve? How could he resolve more moves than Universe God Qin Yang? Jian Wushuang is so low profile. He resolved 35 moves, which was much better than Universe God Qin Yao, but when he came out from the secret room back then, he didn't even say a word. If Universe God Qin Yang didn't ask, we wouldn't know the exact numbers of moves he had resolved in the game. No wonder Jian Wushuang could improve so tremendously in a year. It turned out that he was the one who had the biggest harvest from the chess game back then. The inner disciples of Dayu Palace were astonished. Universe God Qing Yang and Chu Xiao were both left speechless. When they had resolved the chess game, both of them were arrogant and resolved the chess game before everyone. Then, only they realized that Jian Wushuang, who was in the secret room, was the real monster, a monster who was countless times more amazing than them. Jian Wushuang, you are only a universe master, but you resolved 35 moves in the chess game. That's really impressive. Universe God Qin Yang looked cold as he stared at Jian Wushuang. Even though he didn't admit defeat, he couldn't deny the fact that a universe god in the first heaven only managed to resolve 32 moves in the little scattered stars game, even when he gave his all. However, Jian Wushuang, who was just a universe master, could resolve 3 more moves than to him. Well, it's better this way. If you were to be too weak, I'd be constrained when I fight against you. But now, I can give my all and fight with you. Jian Wushuang, you should feel honored. Forget about universe gods in the second heaven or above. You are the only one who is qualified for me to give my all to fight against in Dayu world. Jian Wushuang, enjoy your last moments. You are going to die soon. Universe god Qin Yang's voice was cold, and every single word reverberated in the universe. Once again, the entire universe was in silence. Everyone held their breath and looked at Universe God Qin Yang. Everyone knew that Universe God Qin Yang was going to give his all in the fight. Among the crowd, Chu Xiao held his fists tight and bit his lip. 1 year ago, he exerted himself to the utmost when he fought with Universe God Qin Yang, but he didn't manage to force him to fight with him all out. But then, Universe God was finally going to give his all. He's finally giving his all. The master of Dayu Palace, in the void, smiled, faintly, while Wu Tsang, next to him, was still calm. Hearing what Universe God said, Jian Wushuang's lip twitched into a smile, and the excitement in his eyes grew abundantly. I'd like to see you, who is recognized as the #1 universe god in the first heaven by countless cultivators. How strong are you exactly? Come on. Jian Wushuang's calm voice was heard across the universe. Humph! There was a faint flash in universe god Qin Yang's eyes. With a low humph, his body became illusionary before everyone's eyes. At first, there was only one universe god Qin Yang on the training field, but the very next moment, there were more than a dozen of universe god Qin Yang.